and very safely.
The mics are not, so you amplified in the road, you're recording.
But. So you can't hear us at all?
Now I can hear.
You say now.
No.
So let me just ask if they can hear it now.
Are you able to hear us now?
Yes.
Okay.
What if we turn
So
the
we're
volume
good?
on the TV down?
Yeah, I think we need to turn the volume down on the TV. Great, just one more second, because I know we have an audience. Susan, can we turn the volume down on the TV?
Hear what?
The volume down on the TV.
Say it's too loud.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be hearing.
Just give me a minute, okay, we're gonna get you, we're gonna get you, I'm just. It's the committee speaks first, and we're just getting that, and I'm gonna bring it to the audience, just need your patience, thank you.
We just turned the.
This is the one that.
This is.
But I think we just need to mute the TV.
We never mute it, they won't. Try it. I think it's usually, try it and see if they can hear and it's still feedback, we'll turn it down more.
Okay, are we able to hear it?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, thank you. Okay,
Feedback's okay.
sounds like we're good. Okay, anybody else in the committee have any questions right now? Okay,
Actually, yes.
yeah, please.
Quickly. So you're looking for expanded hours to 3 a.m. How much activity do you expect between 3 and 7 a.m.?
About one truck.
When, and
So there should be 3 or 4 trucks per day. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, one late afternoon, one,
and these are, what size trucks are these?
20 foot trucks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your patience, Conway.
I'm here.
I'm gonna give you a microphone.
Thank you.
Thanks, you can stay seated, stand, whatever you want to do, what makes you feel comfortable.
So I actually live right next to the site that you're talking about at the boat rescue, and so we've never seen anything. It's not a commercial street. We're unaware of commercial space on the street. We're unaware of existing operations.
You know the, sorry, you
No,
could.
no, I was just gonna say, so there are a lot of questions about where the actual entrance is. You said 20-foot trucks. It would be great to know if they're hybrid ISDB for island purposes. It'd be wonderful to know how you manage cycling safety on Forsyth Street to ensure people are going cause.
Yes.
As well as, that's some other questions there.
Oh, here.
Thank you. What else? Facility specs, are you actually using instructions underway? Are you building pumps inside the building? It'd be great to have a little bit of additional detail to be able to tell on how charging facilities. And then, have you, given any, consideration to speaking with the building owners?
Sure.
That's okay.
So, thank you for your question. So
Thank you.
it's currently a restaurant, or it's a closed, recently closed restaurant equipment supply store.
So that's not Rivington, that's the Lancet Street.
I said, Foresight, it's between the landscape. Yes,
It's like.
correct. So, correct, it's on the Delancey, off of the Delancey. Correct. So, so that was one question.
You can take your time and all.
Yeah, and I need help, going back, I could have figured this better, but, we're actually the predominant company for safe charging in New York today. For e-bike charging, so actually, we work with Related, which is a large company, we work with Google, we work with Amazon, Whole Foods, Cloud Kitchens. So we provide charging cabinets for all those different companies. The process of doing it is difficult and insanely over the top safe, which I guess is a good thing. I have a 1-year-old. You know, it's important. Each charging cabinet is in a separate room for FDNY approvals, and there's a requirement, there's a limit on the number of kilowatt hours that can be required in each room. In 4 years plus, we've never had any safety issues at all. No fires, nothing ever go harm. Frankly, we've never had an insurance claim, thank God. Don't want to jinx it, but I'm sure it will happen at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. And we're currently in finalizing our plans and then basically we'll finish do the demo of the construction, I guess. But anyone who's in the space should be a full-time employee. That we know, no, it's not like, yeah, everyone will be a full-time employee, everyone gets properly trained before anyone goes out. Did I cover?
So construction is internal within that 38 Delancey building?
Correct.
Okay.
All the construction will be internal, and construction will comprise of removing, they have some things that we need to remove. They have a welcome area that we need to remove and adding battery charging rooms for them. Everything is going to be completely up to code with proper permits. Everything's already sprinkler, fire alarms. And we've, this is not our first rodeo. And so, yeah, it's extremely important for us to do everything very properly.
And then one of the other questions I have is about cyclist safety. There's a speeding problem on the street generally. People come off the bridge and just head north. So what should we try to, I mean, if you can't ensure, I think there's
Keep cyclists.
to keep cyclists from tearing down the street and blowing to the lights.
Yes.
And
So, we actually, we're the only company in New York, actually, from a delivery perspective, that all of our vehicles are class 1, which basically means there's no throttle on the bikes. All of the vehicles from this location will have speed limits, max 15. Safety is extremely important to us. And any issues that we see, we immediately kind of flag and ensure that it's taken care of very quickly.
Great.
what else is moving?
Oh, I don't want to take it from you.
Should I just let Tessa go ahead since we're the same building?
That's fine. That's fine. Tessa, where you go? Just we need your microphone just so folks can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, logistics.
It's just asking Kate because this mysterious truckload sign showed up and literally there's been no notification whatsoever. What you may not know is we just spent the last 6 years in construction with a huge MTA project that did not make life fun. I had hoped that we would be more in the process. I'm not against what you're doing necessarily, but I would caution no weekends till we see how the weekdays go, since they already have permission for that. I understand your problem, but we are blindsided and that does not feel good. I thought we were talking about micro loading in other parts, because the way the wording was in the notification, it sounded for that agenda. Excuse me, it's an additional agenda. All the more feeling like I was blindsided.
Yeah, so just to clarify here, so tonight we have micro hubs. So this committee had asked DOT to look at the Lower East Side in general to cite a micro hub as part of the pilot project that they're working on. It is not. This is very different. It's a completely different it's not even in a DOT program. It is more or less, they're looking at truck loading in this area to actually do the work. So throughout all of our area, we've got truck loading, we have neighborhood loading zones. We want more of them here so we're not having so many double parked cars. So this is this would be a commercial loading zone that is existing, as I understand. And then what we're asking for is the dates and the times of each house. Was it there, and I don't know, Kate, if you're able to, was it there prior to the MTA?
No,
Current voting, thank you.
Thank you.
So the current loading zone, the Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Was installed at the end of May, beginning of June.
right, so that's what I'm total surprise.
So, then,
Yeah.
if I could just add, this item was put away on the agenda and I contacted your block, people on your block to make sure they're aware of the agenda. I contacted Deborah.
She's not on our block, she's south of us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I meant, Foresight.
Well, I mean, it's really important because we've been through hell and we are beginning to enjoy having a quiet street life, so this is going to not be so quiet. It's not clear to us. Sounds like you're trying to do the right thing, but I sure would like to know more about how it works, so perhaps we could have a tour of your facility to see what that's like, because the facility sounds fine, but it's the traffic that we're concerned about. And while you're here, Dave, we've been asking for a speed bump for at least 15 years, Susan. And we think something like that, you're not.
All I can do
No,
is.
no, so, maybe that would help, but we really do suffer, as Conway said. And this is not going to make any better. And people on the block were pretty annoyed when they saw those truck loading signs go, because they said, where are we supposed to park? We have a hospital at one end with a loading zone, and now we're gonna have this. So this had been a primarily residential block, and now it doesn't seem like it is. So I'm concerned about this, and not thrilled to hear what's happening. We were just getting ready to wash our windows after all this time.
So the one additional question for trucks, and is there any restriction on whether they're internal combustion hybrid?
I have to check back with you on that. I need to double check with someone on my team, but generally, there's very little idling. Just come in, remove the goods from the truck, they're off. We're paying by the minute, so I'll make sure of that, we'll make sure of that. And, the issue is, to me, and part of the micro hub kind of initiative is, we're doing the DOT work for them. It's how I wake up every morning, and, my father moved to America at age 25, he had 0. And many of the, people that we're giving jobs to are also, starting their lives. And, from a micro perspective, the biggest thing, the mission that when we started this company was to remove trucks off the streets for last mile delivery. And, what you see on almost every single city street is truck stop parking, truck stop parking, truck stop parking. And if there's not a dedicated area for the park, it's just gonna happen. It's not what we want, and we wouldn't do it anyway, but, just generally across the city, that's kind of how we're able to have a business, is if we're able to have something. I'm happy to do a tour, happy to walk you through.
But it sounds like it's a done deal, so all you're asking for now is weekends. Or the operating.
Correct.
So can I just suggest that actually the people who live on the block would have liked to learn about this? I thought we did that. This would be. That's.
Okay.
So it is operating, can I just jump in, is it operating already or especially?
The truck loading is operating, if I understood her question, she was saying, the street is operating as truck loading, we are not operating.
You are, says you're assigned.
Yes, that's, that, I don't know if I was clear enough, but
Just a beer.
Okay, Kat.
Yeah. No.
No. I filled out my speakerphone. I wanna echo this, I know Park Coalition across the street, and, I think when we do things like this, it would be really important to make sure that people know before there's something planned, and I guess I wonder, does this increase truck traffic? And while I, I don't really feel like doing nice things for Amazon these days, but, I understand your point. We have a lot of bike, bike riders who are food delivery people, in the park already, and, you're, it's good, it's fantastic, it's good and safe for them, so nothing program. But, I think, I wanna echo also what Francis said about, we have a hospital voting zone there. And, is it gonna create more truck traffic? In that spot?
Sure. My expectation is that we'll be around, like, if you go on Google Maps and you Google the address, there's a truck parked in that space where, it's not meant for truck loading, there's a truck parked in that space at the same time. So, there's parking across the street, there's for regular passenger cars, parking on, across the north side, not.
No,
there's.
Positive. Which means that you haven't visited.
No, I've been there, I was there a few days ago.
We do have parking, Kate. It's unfortunate, we thought we weren't gonna have parking there, that happened again without parking, so.
In front of the
Hey.
spot.
Correct. So there's parking across the street, parking on the Lansing, parking on the other side of the Lansing, parking pretty much everywhere. So I don't think it'll create more truck traffic. I think, it might be in that specific area. And part, again, our trucks moving very quickly. Also because we're moving things too much. The whole point of the whole operation is to the bike. And the majority of the time. They'll be delivering, hopefully to everyone in the room. So.
That would definitely.
It's not, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about, could be various different items, food delivery, pharmaceutical delivery, I'm not referencing good, bad, both, I'm referencing small businesses that comprise apparel, we work with the apparel delivery,
All right, I'm gonna just keep us moving and I apologize, just we have a lot of agenda items to go through here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out. Just for the committee, I just some thoughts for us and I want to go just through everyone here just to see where we're at with this. Yeah, can you put the draft resolution on? So it is kind of unfortunate that I know the neighbors and everyone here not being talked to. But this sounds like a little bit to me is a zoning issue versus a transportation issue a little bit, because I'm assuming the use that you're doing inside this building is allowed by zoning.
right.
And the street is public. We're having this issue in the city of really just things changing so much. And then accommodating that, because your business is going to come or not, it's coming. And you're gonna need the space to actually operate. It's allowed. So that's just kind of where I am. Again, I'm just really, it's unfortunate that as a new business, we're here at the Lower East Side. I mean, I think we're just really always interested in our groups and being just involved with what's going on. And I think you can make a lot of headway with that. John, I know your business model is, I wish there were more of you in this city doing the work that you're doing. I think that's really important here to support a small business of you actually doing what we want others to be doing.
When you
So
go to Europe, go to Asia, we're light years ahead, light years behind.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna just take it back at Lee, you mentioned that you'd want to speak a little bit.
Well, no, a question would be, is who are you offloading for? The question is, who are you offloading for? Is it Amazon? Is it Walmart? Because I think you mentioned textiles or apparel.
Yeah.
Are they, they're on a truck at 3 AM? You've got what, dozens or hundreds of packages from apparel companies?
Sure, so one example would be like New Yorkers, they're a small local brand, they sell T-shirts, that say I love New York, just as an example. So we work with a mixture of small companies and a bunch of them. Could be Capsule as a pharmaceutical company, they deliver so it's really varies. And there, the packages basically come in parts. We do it all ourselves, so the trucks are our team. We bring it with the truck, we offload it right into the space, and then we deliver it to, then we go to, deliveries for 4 hours at a time on the bike, where they're basically delivering to X address and Y address, so actually they're rarely in space, they're more out.
This shouldn't make a difference.
Especially to you.
Thank you.
Quick question, it's one truck at a time.
Yes. One truck at a time.
4 trucks a day.
And the commercial space is large enough to house bikes and RVs at the time.
The commercial space is 16,000 square.
Yeah,
feet.
it's huge.
Very big.
Okay, anybody else on the committee? So the resolution that we have here as a draft form, if you can all see, I just kind of want to go just to kind of see where we're at with this. I wrote it in a way of supporting this, not knowing what the conversation was going to be. But why don't we start from the top? And I'll just read it and then we can talk about where we go from there. Can everybody read it? Okay, I'm not going to read it out loud because everyone can see it.
Might be good to dig out last.
Okay.
Just keep on the back.
Got it. All right. So let me just read. Whereas Jocko operates a business that offloads deliveries from trucks to cargo bikes for last mile delivery, which improves traffic congestion, street safety, and emission in the neighborhood. And whereas the current loading unloading times at 140, 144 Forsyth Street site are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And whereas Jocko requests expanding their loading unloading time to 3 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. 7 days per week to meet the strong demand for home commercial deliveries while minimizing traffic congestion and double parking. This will spread out truck activity, reduce pressure during rush hours, and continue replacing gas vehicles with trucks with cargo e-bikes, improving safety and sustainability for the community. Whereas the location of the Jocko warehouse is 38 Delancey Street, but loading would occur at 140, 144 Forsyth Street. And therefore, be resolved that Community Board 3 supports the expansion of loading and unloading times for Jocko to further reduce the impact of truck deliveries by facilitating the issue of bike delivery. So just want to go through if anyone just, your first thoughts on all this. Lee.
And I apologize, but my concern is the hours, 3 a.m. and something I did not ask, and are you going to be offloading with forklifts? And if so, or any other machinery that, for example, will have a backup warning that may be blaring at 3 to 7 a.m.
No forklifts. There's a lift gate. It comes right down. Cart. We have a number of carts. They're rolled directly into the space. So no forklifts, no heavy furniture, no.
Manually offloading.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like one of those Amazon and Cyber and TV and having a thing, right?
That's what we're trying to remove. We're literally, the goal of what we're trying to remove is people posting up and just deciding to make this their. I'm sure you guys have seen it. If you haven't seen it, tomorrow, walk up the street, you'll see the blue, blue
That
packets.
won't happen. You're not gonna have a delivery from A and that inside inside.
We're gonna transport it from the truck to the space, and in the space we'll do all the work, and then stuff is put on the bike and then goes out. Yes.
You're putting a new entrance exit on Forsyth,
So,
so you're going through the driveway.
I know.
No,
Yeah.
there's-
I'm sorry. We do need to keep moving. I really, I understand. I understand. I understand.
There's a number of entrances, so we'll only be using existing.
Any other questions here? Do you have any revisions to what we would be sending to DOT?
Well, in that case, this is not for Jocko, right? This is a truck loading signage that needs to change. So let's change the language of the 3 places where we say that. We say the expansion of the truck loading and unloading zone signage. Otherwise, it's very.
It makes it feel, you're right, because it's commercial, it really is for any commercial vehicle, and that's actually very important that whenever we're kind of going through.
That's true.
So rather than saying there, like in well, in the second whereas, it really should say that the current truck loading, unloading signage at, so. Put the word truck in front of loading, change the word truck times to signage. At. Or, yeah, that's fine, maybe a problem goes in, but that will fix that. Okay, and then the next one, the first there, was make that B. That'll be clear, and then at the very bottom. It's the first word there, change it to the August.
Yeah, so.
No, at this point, you've already clarified that it is signage you're talking about. It's not there, thank you, and then down at the bottom, and therefore, just let's be clear there, say truck, loading and unloading signage, get rid of the word Joko. Say at whatever this location is instead. 140 to 144 side. Okay. Sounds good. For truck in front of loading, it's truck loading and unloading signage.
So then. I understand David's point is very valid, but that this sort of changes the characterization of the resolution, which originally was for Jocko. We have what appears to be a good operator. But because this is not exclusively for them, this is commercial for anybody. I don't know if the restaurant supply wholesale establishments are still around the corner, but this will not stop somebody from unloading with a forklift or others from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. 7 days a week, which I think really is inappropriate. I don't know how to remedy that for Jocko exclusively.
I've been visiting fairly recently the last few weeks, and I even have some photos, but it's been primarily, and please confirm this if you live on the street. It's been empty every time I've visited, besides for someone sometimes like parking illegally for a couple minutes and then getting out. Have you seen the same thing?
That doesn't stop somebody from.
I don't tend to be out at that hour.
No, I'm saying generally, not even at 3 a.m. I mean, just generally throughout the day.
Sure.
But it's, I believe that people are figuring out where people use what they are using now. And it'll be primarily used by us,
I'm sorry, we gotta keep moving.
So
Let's see.
my. Maybe something just put in there, we're not me speaking against this, I support this.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be clear, because it wasn't.
I
But I do support
Very
it,
clear.
because this is exactly what we want to be seeing. Putting in a truck loading and unloading is not going to attract use of it. Unless there is illegal usage nearby, and then it has a legal place for it to be. But getting this kind of activity off of the streets and into commercial establishment is incredible. This is a big opportunity. I'm glad it's happening, and I think that we need Sunday. And so they need the weekends as well.
Okay, so with that, I just want to go through, we'll just do just a quick vote of a yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
David?
No.
Okay, I'm a yes.
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 So the resolution, just for you all, this is just the committee here, full board, is at the end of the month. You obviously come to that, you can speak to, I'm really gonna suggest you really just, get in contact and just see how you guys can like create that relationship. So, I mean, I think that's key. And Kate, with DOT, this is your street, like, as we all come together, I mean, so, I think that's our next steps.
trucks there because they haven't figured out. the
I-
spot.
I appreciate y'all coming in tonight. All right, we're gonna get to the next one. Okay, so this is the second agenda item, which is the brownfield site remediation at 181 Avenue D. Do we have Douglas or Michelle?
No, I think it's,
Are they joining us online here?
no, so I think it's go under the
Oh,
attendees.
yeah, there's Douglas.
Yeah,
All right.
okay, so promote him to
Oh, I did that.
panelist.
Oh, I got him too. Hi, Douglas, can you speak?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me okay?
Well, we're not hearing you.
Oh, hold on one second.
Douglas, we're having trouble hearing you, unfortunately.
Is this
Oh, now
better?
we gotta turn the volume up. Oh my goodness, we got problems.
It worked fine last week,
No.
I don't know.
Hi, Douglas.
Maybe.
May you speak, Douglas, so we can see if we can hear
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I'm talking right now. How's this?
Perfect. Why don't you go?
Okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. I put together a quick presentation to kind of go over the history of the site. It's the share options here. Nope. Oh, there we go.
All right, Douglas, you should be able to do it now because I just promoted you.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, but we're not seeing your screen.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm about to share the screen. Sorry. It bumped me out and then brought me back in.
All right, Douglas, we got to keep moving, so I'm just going to ask you to.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, you have to make them a co-host to share the screen.
Douglas, try again, please.
All right, are you folks seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. So I'm just here to give a little brief overview of the St. Emmerich's BCP site. They've put out a remedial action work plan for public comment. And so a little bit of history on the site. This area used to be a manufactured gas plant, which meant the late 1800s, early 1900s, we didn't have natural gas. We made it effectively by baking coal and then collecting the gas that came off of that. These are these are pictures of some of those historic structures that were associated with that. You can see here, this is a picture of the old site overlaid on the existing properties. And you can see here, here's the St. Emmerich School and the church. And you can see that there used to be an old holder here. There was a purifier house here, which is another something associated with the site. And so the site operated from roughly the 60s through the 30s. And then it was used basically as a parking lot with some gasoline storage until the church was built, and then St. Emmerich School. Con Edison is actually a responsible party for this site for the overall site. They are not, however, an applicant to the brownfield cleanup program. They're not one of the applicants. And then in 2018, actually the Archdiocese applied and entered into the program. And basically, we've done a couple of investigations and they've identified coal tar waste is the primary contaminant on the property. Most of that is found fairly deep. But there is also a small area where we've found some fuel oil or gasoline associated contamination. And these surface soils do not meet the restricted residential standards that they are looking to reuse the property for. So just real quick, coal tar, it looks like almost like asphalt tar. It's primarily made up of organic compounds, semi-volatile and volatile. Your volatile ones, these are basically the contaminants you find. This is basically what makes up gasoline. They are tend to dissolve in water, but will create a sheen. They will float on water in a separate phase, and do tend to biodegrade very quickly. So we don't see BTEX too far from where the coal tar is. Our PAHs, those are semi-volatiles. That means that they can volatilize, but they don't do that very much. They tend to be denser than water. That's what makes the coal tar it's a dense liquid. So it does not float on top of the groundwater table. And that tends to be what you will find persisting from these sites. So what they're planning on doing, it's a track 4 remedy, which will involve long-term site management. They are going to demolish these existing on-site buildings. They're going to install a in-situ solidification and ISS mass. It's basically a low-strength concrete that is mixed with the existing soil in situ. So they basically dig up a hole and they pump concrete in there and they mix the soil with the concrete. And that what that does is that encases the contamination, so it's not able to be, won't go anywhere, and it's not going to leach its components into the groundwater. And then they're installing a couple of barrier walls along the southwestern and southeastern corners of the site to prevent any potential for remaining contamination from leaving the site and to prevent any potential offsite impacts from entering onto the site. Those are just the requirements, the basic requirements of a BCP site. And then to address that surface soil, they're going to be taking off the upper 2 to 5 feet and making sure that that upper 2 feet either meets the restricted residential site usage guidelines, or that there is some sort of an impermeable barrier over top, asphalt, concrete, the building footprint. They will be performing a soil vapor intrusion study to determine the need for active subslab depressurization system. So what happens is when you have certain volatiles, they will they basically become a gas, and that gas exists in the little particle spaces between the soil, and then it can be collected underneath the building and enter into the building and contaminate the air. But it's not really a problem we generally see with manufactured gas plants, frankly. We don't anticipate that this will be an issue at this site, but they will be performing a soil vapor intrusion study to determine whether they need it. And they will actually go ahead and be installing the piping for that system before they actually construct the building, because it's so much more easier to do that. And then, yes, there is going to be some material left on the property, so there is going to be a long-term site management plan and an easement, which requires the property owner / applicant to follow the requirements of that site management plan. It's going to restrict the use of the site. And if they are ever in contravention of that, they risk using their certificate of completion, which is what gives them those tax credits. So this is just a real quick figure kind of outlining what the actual remedy is going to look like. you can see this small blue square. This is where the ISS is planned. That is based on where we found the those tar impacts on the site. And then these small little red sections on these corners here and up this eastern side, that is where those barrier walls are going to go. Again, that's based on where we found impacts. Those impacts, I might add, are all deep. That's why we're not digging them up. And then you can see the footprint of the building is that darker pink. And then those blue locations indicate where the extraction points will be going for this proposed soil vapor system they're going to be putting in. And so what's going to happen is this is out for public comment. You can reach out to myself or the Department of Health to give comments or ask questions. I'm going to have my contact info up on the next screen. After that comment period closes, the department issues a decision document that is our official record of what we believe the remedy should be. Then there's going to be a small design period while they go in, figure out what the best mix is for the ISS. They're probably going to do some additional exploratory sampling just to nail down some of the areas they got to excavate, determine if there's any sort of subsurface structures they're going to need to remove. Then they're going to actually start the work. Once the work is complete, they file the easement, which is something that runs with the land that is granted actually to the department. And that is what restricts the use of that property and requires the maintenance of the long-term site management. And then they give us a final engineering report and site management plan. Those document the work that was completed and that long-term maintenance plan. And then we issue them a certificate of completion, which basically says the remedy was done according to the plan that we all approved. And at that point, they are free to operate. And that is it. So if you have any comments or questions and you don't want to talk about them now, or we don't have time, I know we're trying to move pretty quickly here. You can call me or email me, or you can call or email Michelle Dolan at the New York State Department of Health. She is the project manager for the site. And just so everyone knows, I am not actually the primary project manager for the site. I was for roughly a decade, and then I was promoted, and now someone who works underneath me is the project manager, and she is out on a leave of absence until August. So I am handling this in her stead. But if at some point you are reaching out after August and you're wondering why you're talking to Sydney Sobel and not me, that is why. And that's about it. So if we have any questions.
It's great, Douglas. Thank you. And I'm going to need to mute that again. So Douglas, I just have one question. So from the community standpoint, what other outreach are we seeing to the community?
So there is going to be an official announcement once the comment period is closed and we issue the decision document. There's an official announcement at that point. And then there will be additional outreach prior to the actual work beginning to let people know that work is beginning.
And is there air monitoring? Is that just kind of the same?
Yes. So anytime they do intrusive work, which even includes putting in investigative borings, they have to perform community air monitoring, which requires them to put up multiple stations around the perimeter of the work area. And they collect continuous data on VOC emissions and dust emissions. And all of those records are collected and sent to us on a regular basis for our review. But there's also part of that plan is a requirement on how to address things if they exceed the guideline limits. Those guideline limits are actually set well below where you would have health effects associated with them. They're meant as a, hey, something is not the way it should be, we need to address this. Not in a, we're going to have a health emergency kind of level. And that happens, that's gonna be ongoing throughout the duration of the project.
Okay, thanks. I'm just gonna see if the committee lead.
I've got two questions. One regarding the monitoring that you just mentioned. That's not live, is it? So in other words, if
No, it is live. It is actually live.
So-
So there is someone who is on the site who is hired, his sole job, their sole job is to make sure that equipment stays up and running. And the equipment sets off an alarm when any of those air standards are contravened. So they know right away that that is going on. And they address it right away.
and that's good to hear. And then the other question is it accurate that the sooner that this plan is implemented, the sooner any potential leaching from this site into Reese or Haven or into the surrounding areas will stop?
So, yes, but I should qualify that by pointing out that this is only a portion of the larger site. There are impacts under the Reese buildings that we have been monitoring, and we've actually, we have a cleanup plan in place that we're about to enact there. That has, that is a much less intrusive activity that we're planning over there. Because of the fact that we can't take down those buildings, obviously. But the remedy over there is built to protect all of those residents over there. But yes, this certainly does take part of that out of the picture.
Just to let people know, the community board worked with DEC about 15 years ago on the problem in recent Haven Plaza. So this is like the third project. What I wanted to ask though about PS34, what impact will this have on the school?
We during the initial investigative phase back in the early 2000s, there was outreach made to the school. My recollection is that we were not allowed to enter and do sampling. There is a renewed effort to get back in that building to perform sampling.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
So during the initial round of investigation that Con Edison performed as part of its consent order with us prior to this being a BCP program, in the BCP program, the school was approached and asked for access to perform sampling in the building. My recollection, and I don't have the report in front of me, so please don't quote me on this, is that we were denied access to the school for sampling. At the time, there were access issues where a lot of the schools, most of the schools were denying us access, frankly. It was just I can't speak to that. But we are doing a renewed effort to get back in there to perform some additional sampling. I will say, the sampling that was performed on this site and all of the sampling that we performed on Jacob Reese has not shown any impacts to indoor air from potential soil vapor intrusion issues. There is no reason to believe that the public school, it would be any different. But we do want to confirm that, so we are making a renewed effort to get back in there and confirm that.
Thanks. Just we have a
If you'll contact us if you'll contact us if you continue to have problems, feel we can.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, it's Community Board 3, that was our district manager. She's there to help you with any communication.
Oh, certainly, thank you.
Yeah, use us here. We just have another question from the committee.
So this is part of a much larger. And I guess for the back sort of in our three portions, this area extends up into Stuyvesant down toward Big Paving Plaza's part of it. It's recently heard about. Susan's referred to, and Jacob Reese houses as well. What areas are remaining? I know it's been divided up and it's a long project. So what comes after this one?
So, what effectively is remaining here is the small portion that ended up under the Haven Plaza property. We have done some sampling over there. We have not found really any indication that there is contamination. But as it is part of that footprint, we will at some point be seeking to issue a decision document for that piece of property. There are the rights of ways, which we do include in long-term site management to ensure that any work in the streets doesn't release any issues. So that's going to be part of that effort to have a decision document and long-term site management for that. And then there is what is considered an off-site portion, which is basically the area from the eastern edge of the Jacob Reese properties through to the East River. There are some deeper impacts out there. Nothing that you would possibly would be a human health exposure risk, but it is an environmental exposure issue. So we would be seeking to address that at some point.
Okay, so at most of the sites, you're actually doing some mitigation here, removing contaminated material and putting in some sort of barrier that you're describing. But most sites, they've ended up just putting in some monitoring, right? Because whatever they found was way deep down, 20 feet down and flowed toward the river bottom. I guess mostly
So a lot of those decisions, a lot of that decision making, we start first with making sure that there aren't any human health exposure risks. That's our number one concern. Once we know that that is not the case, then we are looking to remove source material as much as possible or contain it as much as possible. That ends up being a balancing act, frankly. If you are, any sort of excavation that's done, any sort of even this ISS work that involves truck traffic, that involves heavy equipment and noise, it involves short-term impacts to the community. And we have to weigh those short-term impacts versus what the long-term gain of that activity is going to be. When you also combine that with the fact that we cannot force someone to demolish a building, we end up with a lot of properties that we are either doing long-term monitoring on to make sure that the conditions do not change, or in the instance of most of the sites that I have dealt with in the city, it is a combination of long-term monitoring with collection. So we place some larger wells in areas where we know there is separate phase contamination, and we occasionally go in there and remove the tar out of those wells and basically are very slowly removing the contamination at depth. That is what we are doing at Peter Stuyvesant and at Stuyvesant and Peter Cooper. And what we are planning on doing at Jacob Reese as well, actually.
Okay, does anybody else on the committee have any questions? All right, Douglas, I really appreciate your time. And again, for everybody, contact information if you want to, this is the public comment period. So please reach out with any more questions. We're going to move on. Thanks again, Douglas.
Yep, thank you. I will probably just go ahead and sign out then. But if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Great. Take care.
Thank you.
Maybe just tell people what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Please.
So it's gonna be 100% affordable and supportive. Whatever, that's gonna be there, and set brownfield tax credits. That's probably why we're not getting mostly homes.
It's great. Thanks, Susan. Okay, our next item is the Avenue B safety improvements, and I think we have to mute the TV again. We have to mute the TV again for the back. Mute the TV. So we have a presentation on that from DOT. Great. How y'all doing? Thanks for coming. Want to pull that up for you?
Cool. Great. Well, we get started. I'll just do this quick little background and introduction. My name is Tyler Worman. Seen all of you before. Good to see you again. I'm joined today by my colleague Jessica Bronstein. We're here from the city's Department of Transportation to talk you through a design proposal with the Academy for the equipment suites. We want to go make this full screen maybe, and then also go into the two. All right, I think that's as small as we're gonna get. Yeah, so awesome. So we can go to slide 2 now. So Jessica and I are what's called public grounds, transportation. We are the public space and pedestrian focused team here at DOT. So we focus on all things related to walking, which is the primary mode of transportation for all of the users here in the city. Even if you ride the train, if you ride the bus, even if you bike and drive, you are still a pedestrian in Petaluma. But we manage a whole number of different programs and initiatives to really center pedestrian planning, space planning, the agency. That's why you've seen me here talking about things like open streets and plazas before. But we also deal with things like more informed curb management strategies and corridor type projects. Rethinking complex intersections, focusing on creating premier public spaces that are programs and created throughout the year, as well as maintaining these spaces in partnership with cities and the city. So
You speak, quite a public here, you speak up and not.
yes.
I don't think you're, oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's
It's on, it's on. That's what it is.
You can't turn it on your phone. It's connected to the system, it's not.
okay. I don't want to lose my voice, so I'll try. But can they hear me now? I don't know. Okay, cool. So we'll go to the next slide. So just talking a little bit about the Avenue B open streets. So this was actually one of the very first program sites that launched when Open Streets began as a program during COVID. It was one of the many response effort programs that the city put on. Originally, its footprint ran from Avenue B between East 6th and 14th Street, but currently it's only operating between 7th and 10th Streets, Monday to Sunday, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week, year round. We manage it in partnership with our amazing partners, Hillside Open Streets Coalition, as well as a contractor of the DOT, the Horticultural Society of New York. One thing to note that's important to note, especially in this part of town, is that Open Streets is a permanent program here in New York City. So that means the City Council passed legislation in 2021 that codified this as a permanent program that the DOT manages. And as a part of that permanent program, we have to evaluate successful Open Street sites that design proposed geometric and design changes. That was actually proposed by the Councilmember Rivera, who was the primary sponsor of that bill. And it was passed in 2021. And then we ultimately adopted rules that govern the program in 2024. And obviously we've had a lot of conversation about that at other meetings, but it's just important to know about that. Next slide. So we've been doing a lot of outreach as it pertains to how people would like to see this corridor reimagined in the future. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, the open street itself responds to the peak COVID in May 2020. And as we were doing with many open streets across the city, we launched the vision survey because there was a huge sort of paradigm shift, I think, at the time about how streets view, people view streets as public space. And there was a large call to start some community engagement of how we would envision this corridor. So we kicked off with first community feedback survey. Then the following year, building on that survey and some of the comments heard, doing a couple of design workshops, surveys, we'll talk about it in a few seconds. And then more robustly over the last 2 months, as we continue to cultivate and design proposal for the corridor, we've been doing a lot of local outreach with electeds, community-based organizations, block associations, businesses, and other types of stakeholders. And of course, tonight here, we're presenting to the community board as well. So just running through some of the survey results of what we heard from the 2021 vision survey. Primarily, this was a very local survey. People said that they were on the corridor on a nearly daily basis. People are using the corridor primarily for walking, commuting, biking, participating in some of the group exercises, programming, and other activities that the student's partner had coordinated. And which is probably no surprise here to anyone, the primary mode of transportation is walking and biking, but people also, of course, rely on taxis for hired vehicles and Lyft, their own cars, or getting dropped off by stuff. So in the survey, in addition to asking people how they were currently using the survey, we also asked very pointedly how people like to reimagine this corridor and the types of things they'd like to do on the corridor if we were able to reimagine this. That's it's no surprise a lot of people wanted to continue to have those robust types of elements that came up during the tactical open streets, such as more space for walking, safer commuting, more bike infrastructure, more space for programming and gatherings, exercise, other things. So, we asked also, would members of the public like to see permanent changes to the corridor? And a full 65%, I can barely see from here, but I'm pretty sure it's 65% of the folks who took the survey did indicate that yes, they would like to see it. About a quarter of the people who responded to the survey were mixed, 7% outside no. So it is, pretty strong call from the public as a result of open street for us to make some of these design changes. So we then, moving on to the next slide, took some of that feedback and released the first set of design proposals, following some of the things, like I said, that we had heard in the survey. At the sort of positive level, there was definitely a lot of strong support for making Avenue B a bike and pedestrian priority corridor and going just beyond the 3 blocks that were originally included in the first proposal, looking at the entire Avenue B proposed corridor as a whole. People really like the programming, the events, the sort of community building that comes along with open streets, and a lot of that is coordinated by Open Streets Partner that we mentioned. And opportunities for more sustainable, environmentally friendly elements, greenery, trees, plants, and so on. Of course, we heard some other neutral and concerned feedback. People just had maybe some questions about this first initial proposal and suggested some other improvements, whether pertaining to the design, traffic management, and so on. And then there were some concerns about what would traffic diversion through the first original proposal, how that might impact driving generally in the neighborhood, impacts to parking, preserving space for delivery, emergency access, and so on. So we heard from about a little over 500 people in that first proposal. So taking all of that feedback, we came back to the table most recently, and go to the next slide, with the second design proposal, which has most recently been presented to the public. Many of you have been on Avenue B in the last few days or weeks, might have noticed a lot of signs that we've hung up along the corridor, inviting members of the public to offer feedback. We convened all the businesses on Avenue B, working with other institutions like schools, the churches, fire department, and so on. And much like the other survey, we heard a mix of positive, neutral, and concerned feedback. Overall, we do feel like there is pretty strong support to see something happen. So people are generally really excited to see some of the side elements that Justin is going to run through in just a second. But there's, you know, a huge desire to see more bike and pedestrian priority, more space for pedestrians, public space uses, and overall adding more traffic calming and speed reduction elements and the code for safety. With the other survey, there of course are some concerns, some suggested improvements that could come along with the proposal that can make it all that much better. And just like in the other survey, of course, a bunch of the work that we do, there's always concerns about traffic impacts, parking, and just driving overall. I think that concludes all of the outreach. If you go to the next slide. And with that, I will turn this back to Dan.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So looking at the neighborhood, right, it is a neighborhood that is like very well served by the bike and bus network. Well, kind of weirdly served by the subway network, right, like go all the way west, or you go all the way south, so it's kind of a track for a lot of people in the neighborhood. So wanting to recognize sort of all of those access needs along with all of the schools on the corridor, many of which see people coming in from all over the city. Schools, and then also like recognizing the very well loved community gardens in the neighborhood that serve a very different purpose than the street that's and what the public space in the street. Slide. Thank you. And then looking at who is using the street. Overall, we just see way more pedestrians than we do use the drivers or cyclists. Although honestly, there will be so many cyclists in all three of these corridors. So really wanting to make sure that our infrastructure is meeting people where they are. These counts are taken in February. The peak hour is dictated by when the most cars are, like that's how we sort of do track analysis, it's people count, so this is the peak hour before cars, we saw actually more pedestrians than cars. Next slide. Sorry. And then safety is at the heart of everything we do, and so we've seen a number of pressures on the corridor over the last 5 years, to all modes, including a fatality over at UC and a severe injury at 10th Street. Slide. So we taking sort of all of those inputs along with the open street, park access, community garden access, schools, right, all of those things, sort of read those all together, we go to the next slide. And so, building on all of that, what we want to meet all of those needs is create a public realm pool between some and our sort of big move there is the same one-way conversion northbound for those 3 blocks by the park. And then improve safety overall on the corridor, prioritizing safety improvements like schools, and formalizing the 2-way cycling. All of this is also sort of replacing the current open street operations with the metal barricades with these designs. So the open street overall has been sort of prioritizing those vulnerable users, pedestrians and cyclists. We want to sort of continue on that with these systems.
No more metal barriers, important.
Yes.
No
So again, sort of looking closer at what that means. Again, you know, looking at the schools between 4th and 6th, so safety improvements there. Again, formalizing 2-way cycling or the corridor from 3rd to 15th, so we're landing at those cross towns. Ease open street operations for events, right? So where like our partner will continue to program the space, but they won't be using the metal barricades on that sort of weekend basics. So making it a little bit easier to close for events, and then providing some permanent public space, and then again, those safety improvements by the school. Next slide. And so everything we're talking about here is in-house DOT material, so it's all paint and markings. So looking at bike markings and protection, the rubber speed bumps, the epoxy gravel, that's sort of brown, you know, all of the standard markings, the crosswalks, the road lines, flexible indicators, bike parking, and other amenities like planters and red blocks. So then working, sorry, next slide. And so working our way south to north on the corridor, being a little bit closer at each section. So looking this is the area by the school between 4th and 6th. Adding daylighting at all corners so that we're adding a little bit of visibility for those crossing paths, shortening those crossings, and then adding the sharrows to formalize that to a cycling. And then at the sort of top of the T, adding some space for amenities, where we know that some of the students who gather. And then at E6, where we have heard specifically from school about speeding concerns, in both directions, both STEM and STEM. No. So adding some safety improvements there. Slide. And so looking at what that means sort of operationally, again, shorter slipper crossings, and then you can see in black the curve, right? So the bulk of the parking here is alternate side parking, with the exception of the no standing 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the north end of the 4th to 5th block. And we would be repurposing about 13 parking spots on this stretch. For that space, you can see those in the little red cars. You can also see that we've been kind of generous with that count. A lot of them are sort of flat spots, so. Next slide. So looking at the public realm tour from East 7th to East 10th, the space where we really continued with the open street, and then also where we've seen like a lot of the programming happening. Again, it's that northbound one-way conversion, and really what that gets us is the ability to expand public space by the park. So solve for some of those pinch points by the tree pits, clarify entrances to the park. And again, sort of formalize that two-way cycling with the green paint through the intersection and the road space lines. And again, looking at shortening those crossings, clarifying those entrances to the park. And like making it a little bit easier for folks to see the on traffic as they are crossing. As well as creating some queuing space at those corners. Slide. And so here again, the bulk of this parking is alternate side parking, or the bulk of the programs here are alternate side parking. For the most part, those would remain the same, with the exception of in our outreach. We've spoken to the pastor of the Trinity Lutheran Church, who's interested in adding a truck loading zone that would likely be from and details to be confirmed, to make sure that he can get the deliveries to his big entry. And then again, repurposing about 30 spots on this stretch overall. For the head space improvements and for those. The bulk of that is in that mid block, and that's about 13 spots. 8 to 9 block. Around less than 30. And again, so we're looking a little bit closer at or zooming out a little bit actually at what that one-way conversion looks like and how that might affect circulation, right? So if you were heading southbound on Avenue B at East 10th, you can turn either east or west and then loop back to via so via the eastbound or the next westbound street. So the goal here with that sort of big network move is to make sure that people are still able to get their deliveries, get stuff dropped off at their homes. But make it so that it is local access only, right? So you can still get there, but you sort of need to want to be there, or you need to be there. And again, formalizing that to a site. But. And then, at the northernmost end of the proposal, looking at the corner of East 12th, again, adding daylighting, adding. Shortening those crossings, adding some visibility, adding a little space for, amenities like planters and different blocks. And again, the bulk of this parking is, site parking, so it would be repurposing around 4. And then I think the other thing to flag is, we did sort of move away from the plaza proposal in this like most recent push for engagement with the community. We heard a lot of interest in the plaza proposal, so I think we want to keep this as something that we might explore in the future. If we do explore that in the future, it would require a huge amount of engagement. We really need to figure out how we will be meeting those local needs that we've heard some concerns about in the past. But I think as we move forward, we will continue to like watch the corridor and how people are using it and see what it sees. So next steps. So we are here, it's July 8th. We're at the transportation committee meeting. So we've been doing singular outreach and landscape presentations. Next step would be the full board at the end of the month. We are aiming to implement in early fall, and then again, that sort of post-implementation of educational outreach about changes, and then observations and engagement to assess acts and.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I know we had, before I bring it back to the community here, I just wanted to go, we have Laura here from the Lower Louise Sada Open Streets Community Coalition. I just wanted to hear a little bit about how the operation, the streets going, your thoughts too, as well.
Thank you. It's hard to know. Yes, so I'm doing that. I just wanted to share, people who don't know where I am, that I'm Laura Sewell, director of the East Coast Community Coalition. And we've been working since 2020 with a grassroots group. We reached out for help to become the community sources. Yeah. They rose to the occasion and then some, giving many founding members who moved on their work for residences, and we continue to attract dedicated volunteers. So we want to ensure everyone that we should group is very new here and involved in this and work on this proposal. And we'll be here going forward for the community for concerns. You are very welcome to reach out to us at any time. So we want to express support for this plan. We also want to address any concerns people might have, and we invite for the discussion as we move forward. So the parking situation, just one observation for me is that there are 9 or 10 cars on the west side of the street. It's in the street. Because we put flyers under the windshields every month. So if you build accounts of what the parking is being utilized, is very generous. At the DCC, we've always worked to find a balance between the needs of the immediate residents and making that large. And we really feel that this plan does that. We'll lose some things. What we have today, I feel is really special. And taking that away will allow programming. It will allow more space and be more comfortable, and we will arrange the elements with the designer so that we move the lights along type to the curve when we do programming instead of running into the street. Really ask a lot of annoying questions and work this out so we both that we support. The one thing that we want to clarify is that currently the group is, we have a contract with the DOT, so the Lower Side of the Streets Coalition has a contract with the DOT to be the community partner from Second to 10th Street. That is what we were given this year and last year. We would need, and that's that goes through 2025 in December. So we would need to apply, in order to be programming North and South, we would need to apply next year for whatever we're calling it, fourth to 12th. We would have to apply for a full stretch from 4th to 12th and hopefully be approved to do that. So if that is, if our ability to do that is an interesting committee and a resolution that supports, DOT's approving the community partnership, that would be great. The plus side of this, we're happy to do the state vote permitting process for full closures. We actually like to do that, because that goes out to the police and fire department and EMS, and we all know we're there, and they all know how to work it. So that's been great. Well, this will allow us to do like minor pop-up activations, like a book part near a school, that's receiving without having to go through that process. So that's what we love to do that. So. And I'm available for any questions that you have.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, and thanks to DOT and thanks, I mean, working together. I know the Avenue B open street is beloved by the community and the users. And so thanks for doing that for the community. This is fantastic. It's like the growth of of what we're doing with the public realm, with the open space, the city and the streets, and how we can kind of look at this public space, which is so precious in different ways. So completely into that. I'm really happy that Laura's happy with design. I think the design is respectful to kind of all the users in the neighborhood, which is great. It is something that when we talk about the resolution, expand that open street, you know, just so there's more opportunity to kind of like spreading the wealth of all the activity that's right at the park. If we can actually spread that activity along Avenue B, I think that is important. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'll open up to the committee here if you all have any questions on the design.
So I'm supportive of it. I'm very glad that the plaza idea is not here, and so you look at closely when you do look at that. Understand that that is the route for the fire department to take to get from down Second Street up to his houses. We had a very bad situation early in the pandemic. Is that on the street I forget, there was a place where adult adolescents would get drunk in the morning. In those places, it was terrible because they couldn't get through. And you know they couldn't get through because when there were two firehouses going, they arrived in the wrong order. You've got a protocol where they know that the one from Second Street will be there first. And that was not happening. So make sure that you do not do anything on Avenue B that will obstruct the fire department traffic when necessary. And when you say plaza, I have no idea what that looked like, but if it, for instance, was like huge boulders and raised concrete, that would not. So anyway, I'm glad it's on here and I support it.
So we have a very good working relationship with actually this battalion. And we worked with them specifically on the plaza between 17th on Broadway, which is right around the corner from the firehouse on Eaton. It is a different BC Quinn has been great. Anyway, so that's another instance where they respond upwards of 12 times a day to use where the subway station specifically. And so getting through that block was incredibly important. We designed for that access specifically and designed around. So understanding, I mean, again, we don't have that proposal for plaza, but yes, we work very closely with
They've been an active agency in some streets since then. So I remember walking with you in 2020 with the fire department.
So hey now, wasn't that?
We were all at the table, we all came to the conversation with the fire department, and as Laura said, also we're supposed to be programming the events, so they are active and engaged.
So one more thing, I lived there for 30 years, do no longer, but I was always, I like the 3 blocks by the park, basically on one way. I will say that I've always been very against making, having it be one way, because then it becomes a thoroughfare as opposed to neighborhood street. But this strikes me as the exact opposite, thoroughfare, that you are doing. Does prevent the possibility of ever getting the avenue bus back, but I don't think that's. So. I do like that stuff. It's reversal.
Thanks, so can you tell me a little more about 4th Street to 6th Street? What were you doing there?
Yeah, can we pull this up? Sorry, is that very complicated?
Because 4th Street is very narrow, 4th Street to 3rd Street. Really busy,
Yeah,
and we have these already giant trucks that pull off right on this corner. And it's just, so what, how we got it there?
yeah, sorry, so very kind of moving that to the book, but basically at the corner of East Fourth on the north side on both. Go on, yeah, so I think if you go up to maybe slide 14, okay. Oh, wait, go back, sorry, I was too far up. I start down like 3. There it is. Okay, so starting from the south, on Fourth, where there's already the city bike path. So we would add headspace from the city bike dock to the corner. And again, sort of shorten those crossings, add headspace on the far corner. So the north east corner. And again, so that's really to try and make it safer for crossing pedestrians.
That's the like extending that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's. Yeah, so it adds a little bit of green space, it makes it makes it easier both for cars to see them and for them to see cars. It's like that, and then, moving towards East Fifth. Very similar treatment on that southwest corner. On the northwest corner, we would only be adding the open space on Avenue B, that's designed around the turning radius of the SU. Like a box truck. The trucks that make most deliveries. And fire trucks, yes, of course, very nice.
And you say you're gonna parking.
Yeah, yes, so maybe go to the next slide. This is where, the next slide is where we talked about the parking lot, so, sorry, getting. Yeah.
I'm all for the parking,
Great. Okay, so fire population, we would be using about half a spot here, but we marked it as a whole spot. A whole spot here, half a spot here, and mark it as a whole spot here. Half a spot here.
Oh, okay.
This is already now standing in.
Yeah. Okay.
And then apologies, at the 6th again, where like we heard specifically have student concerns from the school. And specifically when they're doing their sort of like emergency drills. Again, like really sort of trying to tighten up that intersection as much as possible. And that would be another. So another half spot here, half spot here, half spot here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there's gonna be,
Yeah, that is a good.
Oh,
cue.
sorry.
Apologies, no, and that was actually a very big cue. So as part of the safety improvements on the corridor, we are changing this component to 50 miles per hour. Like, yeah.
About 15 years ago, this whole area became part of the neighborhood snow zone, so we call it.
Yeah.
There used to be a speed bump to the middle of 6th Street, mid-block between the right one my apartment. And when they regraded the street, that went away. They just didn't put one back. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Might help this reading at the road school.
Yeah, we can look into what happened there and whether it was something happened. Yeah.
Are the shadows, were the shadows or like?
Sorry, say that again?
Are you adding the shadows, sorry?
Yes, the shadows.
So you know the shadows are more dangerous than nothing, right? Like for recent studies,
What was your rationale for adding trailers?
Well, so we've actually recently changed our standards for how we mark trails, right? So we used to mark them on the side of the road. We currently mark them sort of centered on the vehicle path. The idea there is that it is like telling vehicles to expect cyclists in the road, and cyclists should be the pace setters for the road. Okay, so that's
This is also a really similar design that we just did on Berry Street, Williamsburg, and Underhill Avenue. That's nice. You know, both sites borrow different parts of this particular design, but at both of those corridors, it's been a huge boon for cyclists and crashes like that. So we've seen a lot of success with these similar types of designs. Are there more robust types of bike facilities that are in DOT's portfolio? Of course. This is also just paint at the end of the day, so something maybe bigger in the future.
You guys think this is like trucks, being together and all that?
yes. Yeah, sorry, so, just building on what Kyle was saying, I think the other thing to think about here is that the shadows are like one piece of like whole suite of treatments, right? Combined with the 1 week conversion, combined with the neck downs, right? It's like a whole bunch of things all acting in concert. And then, yes, our base design vehicle is an SU30, and then we always design for access. Right, the box truck. I keep slipping in on.
Susan?
Thank you. So this came up before, I just want to be more emphatic about it. I don't know what to say. So last year, the committee voted to have the open street up to 12th Street. And it did not happen, and it took a lot of work and finally, after the committee, through a lot of advocacy, made it happen. And there wasn't any problems that I'm aware of. Committee again did vote that way this year. I was not able to be successfully advocate, so it did not happen. So going forward, one is like, what is an issue with being able to activate and put it down the larger stretch of Avenue B as it was before? I know it's not the same open street, but just to be able to do it as it was before. One, can we and DOT commit to allowing that next year? If not, or even if you think it needs consideration, what is the downside? Because I just don't understand what the downside is.
Yeah, so I think the sort of definition of this particular type of open street is really going to change once we formally redesign the borders. I think it's no secret to anyone here that the metal barriers are a very ineffective and sort of triggering tool for a lot of people who have mixed streets. So moving away from that model, the open street is going to be less reliant on defending out and breaking down metal barriers on a daily basis. Also, just sidebar, the metal barriers, this is the most difficult corridor for us to set up metal barriers in the city. The wind tunnel that is on FBD, they blow over all the time, but that's a separate story. But moving forward, the open street itself will be, technically the design is only from 4th to 12th Street. Moving forward, we are fine, assuming that's okay with the partner, to have the full corridor. But the caveat is, of course, like Noah said, there's just a single permit, so you need to do a full closure, or if you're doing anything in the pedestrian spaces, which is basically essentially sidewalk type of permit. But yes, we would totally be committed to go to that.
Great.
So a couple of things. What's the rationale for making a portion of Avenue B one way? And coupled with that, we had discussions, I believe, at a couple of meetings. You had mentioned that vehicles can now be forced by choice to go down East 10th Street, which at least 2 of our meetings we acknowledge is an extremely dangerous area. I think it's 10th and C. There's mentioned 1 fatality. Recently, I believe there may have been others, or certainly serious injuries. So what's the rationale for that? And then the other question is, what effect does the removal, especially around on the corner of Sixth Street, of removal of 6 parking spots have, what's the effect on teacher parking? Especially considering you're removing 47 spots for the multiple schools.
So. Okay, speaking to the network change first, so the rationale is again to maintain the sort of necessary access to the corridor. But to ensure that it's local access, right? So if you are. Again, sort of to that thoroughfare again, we wanna discourage the thoroughfare, we want it to be people who need to get there, to get to their homes, to make deliveries. To sort of go about their like local business, but we don't want it to be a through route from 14 to. And again, that is part of the sort of suite of things aimed at prioritizing pedestrians. And then looking at East 10th, the reason that we chose that for the sort of split is because we have access both East and West. So from a routing perspective, if you are trying to get to the block of 8th between Avenue B and Avenue C, you can make that left. And we were on that one, right? Or if you're trying to get further down the corridor, you can make the right and go yeah, right? So we just have more options.
And regarding the loss of, is there a potential loss of teacher parking?
Yeah, so we'll be working with the school, we met with them already, to make sure that there isn't a loss of, technically what it's like, school business.
Okay. We've got a few people online that have their hands up. I appreciate it. We're gonna get to you soon. We also have folks in the crowd here that want to speak, but anybody else, committee, before I go? All right, Eden? Hi, Eden. Because it's so late, we're just gonna give you like 2 minutes. That's okay. I'll put a little timer on, help you out.
Ask this. So of the initial survey, the one specifically that you said you have the majority of folks in favor of counting survey. In terms of the vehicles that you accounted for, on that slide, we have like pedestrians, vehicles, on that particular slide, were those, is that number of counting for vehicles representing a family, or is that just the individual vehicles? So for example, a vehicle representing 2 or 4 people, and how does that skew the data, or was that accounted for? Just general concerns, I mean. Access is just necessary, right? Like I'm a driver, and the moment that access is changed, tends to see traffic go up. It's difficult for me to understand how this will help reduce traffic, and just I also have difficulty tracking and understanding how like crashes are attracting the city, because obviously I see someone get twice a week. So I don't know how accurate the numbers are, but it's concerning to have something that's then prioritizing and optimizing that space for bikers when it feels like that it's also a data. That's what my questions are. Thank you, Jessica, so much for your time meeting with us. Okay. Yeah, of course, anytime. I will let pass me to the survey results. I will say, so, we only count labels, we don't count, like we, with windows, with that, like, it's very challenging, so, when we take counts, again, we do define the peak hour by when the most vehicles are, using the space, rather than like any of them. Let's see, the other question, so then, sorry, prioritizing cyclists, the goal is to make it safer. So adding all the safety improvements, adding all of the neck downs, adding the markings, so the goal is to who are already using the space, right? And not honoring traffic law. So you're increasing the bike lanes that are not honoring traffic law, there's no. So and that is that's the concern that I want to see addressed. I do think open streets are amazing. I just want to say that. I just need to put that joke. That's fair. And then sorry, the last thing with that, it's based on reports to be. So our data is based on that data.
Wait, survey, you're referring to which 2021 survey or those 3?
Well, yeah, all 3 else.
So the first one, if I remember off the top of my head, was 698 spaces. The second was 501. And the third one, I think, says 479, but before I left the office to come here, was at 520.
Those in this neighborhood feel like small numbers, definitely feel like very small numbers for something that would not.
Sure, it does not also capture necessarily all of the conversations and questions that we have. These workshops that we have over years, for the individual conversations, and that's what you, schools, I do want to just go back to your point about cyclist education, something I think it's a top priority for the city.
Just specific for, just our speaker phone.
The free,
Thank you.
it's used itself, speaking. Police delivery cyclists, with the wider economy around delivery cyclists, earlier tonight. So we recognize that it's something that needs addressing and we're progressively.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Virginia Millington? 2 minutes?
Hi everyone, so my name is Virginia. I have parents and I'm a school position communities have children which is like about 3. So I'm gonna speak about the impact of my support for the applicant this proposal relates to Wall Street safety improvements. My son is in 3rd grade next year. He's been going to school for 3 years. I probably pass that intersection every day and on the weekends to go as well, because that is how I get to the public library, to Sawyer Park, to his favorite restaurant, which is Burgers MPD. I just want to say that having increased safety for that intersection not only benefits people on their way to the school, which most people I think are maybe not most, but a lot of people walk to school through that intersection to get there. But also the school itself is really proud of its tradition of taking the kids out to the parks. They do walks to Tompkins Park to commemorate World AIDS Day, for example. The school itself has a commitment to marching and supporting and being on the streets, and anything that we can do to make the streets safer, I think I really want to support. I also want to see as a member of the school leadership team that not views are shared, but that I work with and talk to the parents. And this is something that's really important to us, and because this can be a commuters both by train and by walking, having that street safe, accessible for both the commute and for activities during the day is just really essential. So
Great, thank you. All right, Will? You have 2 minutes.
Great. I'm Will Arlo. I am president, bike rider and pedestrian. I also volunteer with close, having be with the street advocacy. So I'm really excited for the safety, accessibility, and traffic calming measures. I think these are all great. I'd love to see more in the future as we get there. As part of the outreach that we've done, spoken with some business owners up and down Avenue B, just in favor of street improvements like these, specifically commenting on how things like increased foot traffic tend to increase their revenues. Well, during programming for the street shut down sort of around those times. Others finally remember the days where the police were extended all the way up to State Street, other points. So yeah, I think that like the opportunities that we have to use the avenue for pedestrian friendly activities really do help New York City, this small business side, the opportunities we have is great. And a more well-fitting design for pedestrians of this street, which no doubt have more sort of continuously positive impact on business revenues in the long run. And yeah, I'm excited to see where things go.
Thank you. Cecil? Hi.
Hi, thank you. My name is Cecil Shive. I live at Avenue B and 9th Street. And on that block, one of the critically injured people happened when a car driver making some very poor decisions in or under their car on the sidewalk on that block. 2 people from the park came to rescue her. You know, I tell that story because at that time when that happened, I think in 2018, I didn't know anything could be done. I thought that was just what it meant to live in the city. Sometimes you get run over on the sidewalk. Then when COVID happened and the barriers came up, everyone could still get to the buildings, but everyone slowed down. And I saw how much safer it was. I could bike with my son, who was 3 then, 8 now. He's going to school on 12th Street. He's now going to school on Hampton, he's going on that street every day. It's safer. If we go out when the barriers are up, the traffic moves slow. If we go out early in the morning, like now we're going to Canton, Brooklyn, so we leave at 7. I watch the drivers, they see the lights turn green from 6 all the way to 14, and it's pedal to the metal. They go so fast. It is so dangerous. So I want that safety for that street. Things have changed. You don't necessarily need the open space anymore for COVID. I want the safety. I do want to add one thing to what Jessica said about bike access to our neighborhood, which is good in the east-west directions. We have the 12th and 13th Street lanes, we have the Houston Street lane, which is a protected bike lane. There's not a lot of north-south connectivity to those protected lanes. Avenue A and Avenue C are a little bit dicey if you're biking with a child. So adding this on Avenue B that's gonna connect those lanes, I think will really help parents to feel like they can get around with their kids in the neighborhood. Citizens have been counting traffic at B and 7 in May since 2019, so it's pre-COVID, and the ratio of bikes to cars is split at 70 in that time. So I speak in support for the safety on the street.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we have Liam, 2 minutes.
Hi, this comment's gonna be short, most of my points already been said, in favor of this already, so it'll be short. I want this, it should be a model for North Avenue, Manhattan. I also want to speak to the benefits, the safety benefits this will give sidewalk area. These are New Yorkers, these are people who deserve protection, same amount of protection as everyone else, and this design will fulfill that, so I very much will on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for folks online, we're gonna go to you. If you want to speak, please put up your hands. I'm gonna unmute you for you to speak. If I can. I can't unmute.
We lost the people at home are not seeing the video.
Oh.
Lost
It's
camera.
possible that it's on that one.
I think, yeah, the problem may be that we started it on that computer, this one.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, something like the choice of video, so.
I don't think.
I don't know how it goes that the camera that should be. That's the camera choice on that.
It looked like it was working. It's here.
But it's not at home. See my screen, that's what they're seeing at home.
It's so bizarre.
So I think we may want to make this not go.
Maybe I should share this screen. Would that work?
I don't see how. No.
I'm gonna just read the question.
Want to try that?
I suspect that avenue is the narrowest of all of the avenues. It's not working.
I think it's because, I think that's my fault. I think it's because I started.
I would like to know if that's true.
That's the only thing I can think of.
But right now I can't.
Because
Right.
No.
But I was able to do that before.
Well, that's, what did you want to do?
Let them speak.
We should be able to. I reclaimed host to see if that
I
would.
know it's from far. No,
It's very slim.
see, you're not gonna do it. I'm pretty sure it's normal.
3 buttons.
See whether it's. It is 8:13.
I could just do it for yours.
That's fine, that's fine. See, so, no, it's narrow. It's.
Okay. Why would it? That's silly.
Hello? Can you hear me? Do you want me to speak now?
Hi, Ryan. You can speak?
Great. Hi, I'm Ryan Gillum. I am.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I apologize for folks online. We are having some technical difficulties tonight. Thanks for bearing with us. We're just gonna, we can't hear you in the room right now, but we're gonna try to make that work. Just give us a second, Ryan.
Okay, turn it on.
You turned up. Hey, Ryan, can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, yes, I'm Ryan Gillum. I'm the Executive Director of Fourth Arts Block, and we are programming partner on Avenue B Open Street. And I just have a few questions about for when we do close the street entirely for programming. Right now, there is both a pedestrian walk and a bike lane running south. And there is bike access running north on the block on Avenue B between 8th and 9th. And when we do programming, we need a good amount of the street width in order to accommodate people gathering. I want to make sure that that we can narrow it so that there's only a bike lane and not a pedestrian lane inside the curb line, inside the street portion. And two, that we aren't required to have both bike lanes continued open when we close the street for programming.
Thanks. Yeah. Move microphone.
Please do not do that.
Yeah, just, it's okay.
Hello, Ryan. When you close the street through a safety permit on a temporary basis, you don't necessarily need to follow the markings for the pedestrian and bike space.
I'm sorry, Kyle, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Maybe that's so when you're doing an event on the streets through a safety permit, you don't necessarily need to adhere to the markings that are on the street. So like the bike lane or the pedestrian space doesn't need to be exactly where it is when you're doing a safe permitted full closure of the streets. But you should, of course, maintain generally, as you know, of course, we have emergency lane and you can do it on the same thing with scale 2. So if that's at the center or at the west or whatever, it's fine as long as it's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm hearing Susan at the same time.
Probably we'd have to tell them that we're doing it.
Kyle, can I just repeat back to you in case to make sure that
Wait till we.
you're I'm hearing you correctly. So do we only need to preserve a single bike lane during the street closure? Like one on the east side would function?
Talk about the best way to do it in the context of a single permitted event, but that it doesn't have to adhere to exactly where the green is. They can change in between.
Okay, Laura, you're in the room. I think you're gonna hear better than I'm hearing. You know what I'm trying to raise. Okay, are you getting the right?
Right, so I'll just add that when we discussed this planner and Ryan and I in the street, we talked about them moving to our rights. We've always established a bike lane during our full programs, and it's on one side or another, right down the middle on the use of disaster. So we discussed running the bike lane into the pedestrian area. And that was his solution that he presented as an option. We can certainly discuss it further, but the idea was that yes, we'll be able to place the objects so that we will be that and have the rest of the street.
Yeah, I think let's have a conversation about it offline because anything is possible. I think we can definitely make it work. But yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, great. We just don't want to narrow the street too far, because
Ryan, we gotta keep moving. I apologize, but I gotta go next to Emily. Thank you for participating.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Emily, and I'm the community organizer at Open Plans. We've been longtime supporters of the Avenue B Open Streets, and I've been following this project closely. And we've also had the opportunity to table and speak directly with neighbors about their street safety concerns and ideas for the neighborhood. We're thrilled about this street improvement project and fully support DOT's plans to make Avenue B safer and more welcoming for everyone. Many neighbors that we've spoken with have expressed support for additional traffic calming measures, including daylighting, a plaza block next to Tompkins Square Park, and more loading zones to help reduce the double parking. Very excited to see these neighborhood changes, and thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's it. Okay, we move.
What?
Can we mute TV? Excellent. Okay, committee, anybody else would like to speak? Sure, Sean.
I'm crashing, sorry, I'm like, it's getting late. I had a couple points. I think the biggest thing is just like a reminder on what Avenue B is and has been to this community. Like this is the gold standard of open streets in the Lower East Side, in our community. The most frustrating part about this is that it's 5 years in the making to get to this point. But we're very excited that we've gotten here, and you know, our committee, our board has been very much in support of Avenue B and the programming and the partners, and it's been a very close relationship. But the reality is that running Avenue B has been extremely difficult for primarily a volunteer ran, you know, community effort, putting up gates, taking down gates, keeping things in order, you know, trying to run programming for kids and getting into shouting matches with cars who are trying to drive through the corridor. It's been extremely frustrating, but it speaks to the kind of resilience of the group that's been, you know, spearheading this, and of course the community that's been wanting this. I think, you know, we can't, you know, overstate how important that daylighting around the school corridor. Like Avenue B is a school corridor. Multiple schools, multiple school children, grade schools, and middle and high school, but grade school children walking through these streets with their parents. Some of the most vulnerable users in our community going up and down this corridor. So the daylighting is extremely beneficial. For those who are not clear from that picture, and just, you know, in rudimentary kind of explanation, the daylighting is not only creating more pedestrian space so that people can, you know, have more space to walk, but it's the line of sight, right? When cars are turning onto Avenue B, they can't see things because cars are parked near the crosswalk. You know, clearing out that space, making sure it's safe for the pedestrians, especially children and older adults, but also safe for the drivers. As someone who drives in the neighborhood regularly, I lived on 6th and C for, you know, nearly 15 years, and I have a 10-year-old child now. It's scary to drive through the neighborhood. And is it going to be frustrating that we're losing parking spaces on Avenue B? Is it going to be frustrating that we have to go slower on Avenue B as a driver? Yes, and it should be. It should be frustrating, right? Because the street should not be prioritized for the cars. This is the most narrow avenue we talk about. This is why it's the best avenue to do this treatment. I mean, you know, really, you know, there should be a full closure on certain things, but I think, you know, this step is so critical to making kids safe on the corridor, to supporting the programming that we as a community board have been long since supporters of. And also too, I think, you know, again, it's long overdue, very excited that it's happening. Will there be a learning curve, frustration, people trying to figure out new parking spaces, people trying to figure out the northbound, southbound thing? Yes, that's gonna be, there's gonna be a learning curve to make that happen. But we'll survive, and our community is gonna be safer for it.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Anybody else? All right, let's get the resolution on. So, folks, I have a draft resolution here that I'll read out, and then we'll talk about the therefores when we get there. So first here is, whereas the Department of Transportation is planning a street improvement project on Avenue B, Open Street between East 12th Street and East 4th Street. And whereas the goals of the project are to provide permanent public space and ease of operations, for use in open street events, improve safety on the corridor with a focus on schools, create safe cycling connections, calm traffic on the corridor to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists, and replace open street barricades with design treatments. And whereas the proposed design changes were made considering the open street access to Tompkins Square Park, multiple schools along the corridor, high volumes of cyclists, and multiple community gardens. And whereas due to the presence of multiple schools along the corridor, special focus has been given to these areas to create more pedestrian visibility and potential street seats locations. And whereas between East 7th Street and 10th Street along Tompkins Square Park, the plan proposes converting the motor vehicles traffic pattern from two-way to one-way northbound while establishing a contraflow southbound bike lane and adding sharrows to the one-way lane. And whereas the project includes street safety changes such as shortened crossings, expanded pedestrian space for visibility, edge objects, traffic calming, daylighting at intersections, and prioritization of pedestrians and cyclists. And whereas the community partner will retain the ability to activate and program Avenue B between 10th and 12th Streets with programming through the Open Streets program. And whereas adjacent to Tompkins Square Park, the pedestrian designs proposed would open up the streets in front of the 3 park entrances on Avenue B and create more space to relieve pedestrian traffic. And so here's the draft. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 3 supports the DOT's proposed street improvement project to increase street safety, calm traffic, emphasize park entrances, and facilitate open street operations and continued activation and programming through open streets from 4th through 12th Streets. So just so you see what I wrote here, or what we wrote here is through open streets is that we're supporting the coalitions to kind of expand that open street partnership with DOT from 4th to 12th. So just go to David.
Just a question about accuracy above the page break. Whereas above the page break, where you talk about sheriffs, what is that phrasing saying? Of the one above that, there. The two-way to one-way while establishing the conflict flow, and sharrows to the one-way. That stretch between 7th and 10th would be two-way for cycle, for bicycles. So I don't think that that's clear.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're adding sharrows from 3rd to. Third to 3rd.
So I don't know what the treatment is on those blocks, but from 3rd to 13th, you will have sharrows.
So is it like a true two-way bike lane that
So
on?
the northbound will be sheriff's, and the southbound will be like a green lane section, and a full north.
Got it. So I think maybe we'll just do a second whereas to talk about the bikeway.
State that that's a two-way cycle. A profitable southbound red bike lane.
From two-way to one-way northbound, and I think we just do period and then do a second whereas a two-way bike lane between 7th and 10th Street, and then sharrows from 3rd to 13th outside that. Let's plan it.
Right, so it actually is accurate, it would just be confusing.
Yeah,
because I
it's
thought
just
it was
the language.
Not clarifying that there's actually two-way for the bicycles. Maybe it could just be a phrase saying it's two-way cycles. Two ways by left. Okay, so there's actually nothing wrong with it as written, it's kind of late, because the one who might complain would be the agent, so you said, but you did just prove what we are actually talking about.
Sorry, so
It actually is what we're talking about, so I don't know if you need to press for this much longer. It's always useful. But we're more good, there's other stuff.
The marketing process itself can be developed with overall features, they tend to be one kind of marketing. Yeah, well, and then some like one that actually went down market, it's very fast, like.
All right, David Wordsmith, I know, so what we have there is that we changed that. So whereas between East 7th Street and East 10th Street along Tompkins Square Park, the plan proposes converting the motor vehicle traffic pattern from two-way to one-way northbound, and whereas between 4th and 13th Streets, sharrows will be delineated northbound and southbound, while two-way bike lanes will be established between 7th and 10th Street.
Good.
Okay.
I have a procedural question for you and or Susan.
Yeah.
Who drafted this and when was this draft available?
And then he sends it to me and then I review it. And then actually, sometimes we go back and forth a little bit on different things, and then I forward it over to Nancy to bring up here tonight.
I would only request, and I think I've requested this in the past, if it's possible, when there is an almost finalized resolution, if it can be made available to the members, just so that we can review it in advance.
Yeah, I love that
That's
idea.
feasible.
If it's when time allows, but yes, to your point, Lee, yeah, most definitely.
That from you. And then finally it's published in the so wrote the resolution in the
Yeah,
thank you.
But to your point, of course, yeah. All right, Nancy, if we can just go to the therefore. So one thing that I was wondering if we wanted to add here, because it talks about a loading zone for the church. And do we want to have, I think at the end of the day, loading zones, neighborhood loading zones, all these different things for the whole area really need to come back to us. So that might be something that therefore we, further be resolved, that DOT come and, back and propose any additional loading zones or neighborhood loading zones along the corridor separately.
Separate and apart from this.
Correct. Since that's not really what we're talking about here, it really wasn't talking about loading zones. So. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Can it ask is if the DOT will come back to discuss loading the zones of everything?
Yeah, I think we're willing to do that. I'm separate from this project, we're just in general on board.
It's kind of like for this project, because you're saying loading zones, and it's, I know that you're working directly with the church, but again, just to make sure that the community knows what they're actually approving. That's the only thing here, just that.
Are you thinking about the hours loading zone or what specific information would you want us?
Oh, actually, sorry, Kate, just for folks. Yeah.
Sounds like we need more words.
I guess, yeah, what is the app for hours of operation or what's
I think like the proposal, so there was back in 2019, and again, that's a long time ago, that the board actually asked for neighborhood loading zones along Avenue B and a study to be done, which never really happened, but this is open streets. It's a little bit different than loading zones, but I think it's something that should be addressed, but I don't think we can address it here tonight because it wasn't actually an agenda item.
I would also suggest that we speak to Pastor Will, what they need before we go that.
Right, exactly. And that's where I'm concerned that it's actually on the drawing. And so when we do this, we're kind of approving that without it actually knowing much about it, what the ask is and all these types of things.
I think that's
I mean, I don't want to delay. I know you guys are moving and we don't meet again until September, but I think it's just, hopefully it's just something that I think a loading zone is it's an erection of a sign, right? So that could hopefully maybe come afterwards.
Yeah,
So you're looking for language for the resolve, just to clarify that you're committed to coming back to discuss the precise locations and hours of loading, uploading the removals, those are what it probably is.
Yeah, that's what we're asking.
Let's draft the sentence and see if they.
Yeah.
If they're too much. Or say that that's reasonable. I still understand, but I mean, sometimes they don't. But anyway, to make sure that it's got the right language.
Maintain that program says they are active.
Just to actually go to a separate agenda item, precise location of time, regulation, precise regulation. Sometimes we believe, I'd say it'd be better if it was ignored.
How's that look?
Especially or for separate approval of the site of the specific.
It's a separate approval.
Yeah. So not further discussion, I say separate or. Very good. Is that? I mean, it's sort of there. Where? I mean, it's pretty standard that if they reload that, so it does come into the board. To ask for opinion.
Because I think it relates to kind of like the improvements that we're doing through here of like, again, these are narrow streets. You get the delivery trucks are taking, let's say the northbound lane. And so cars are swinging out, you got bikes going through, like it is kind of, I think, part of this.
David, just to the point, not every loading zone comes through CB3, just want to make that clear, sometimes DOT does receive requests that we respond to, but I think in the instance of CB3, there's been a lot of examples where the committee has requested loading zones, or they have examples of change in hours, or the size of the loading zone, but just wanted to say that not every loading.
So, okay, so most of them come through as requests from us, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
There's one that did come to us. Recently.
No, understood. I just wanted to say that.
Right. Anything else? Sorry, I know it's getting late. 10th and Avenue C, that was brought up by you, Lee, with the death and that. And again, that is something I don't want to put in here because I don't think we do, but just knowing who's in the room here. That is something, a resolution where we did ask DOT to kind of look at from a design standpoint and really would love to see that intersection, what improvements can be made there to make it safer with that death there. So I don't want to do this, but it is related to this improvement because of what Lee had said, traffic diversion, that is just an important intersection that we'd like to have you guys come back and just see what improvements can be done there.
And just to that point, for 10th and C, we did add a median pedestrian interval following the fatality, so that there's additional crossing time for pedestrians.
Okay, that's great. That is good to hear. There's been some advancement on that. Last thing here, sorry, I'm looking at my notes now. Speed humps. Do we? I think there's issues. I think maybe that's something that we can look at afterwards. I think that might create some more issues, possibly. But anyone has any thought on that?
I don't think we need to add it. If it's a big safety improvement, the person put it back. It was very loud.
Yeah,
It was right well that way though.
yeah. I think that.
It's people speed because they would go right over it pretty more than. Quote.
I can't. Agreed. Okay. Laura. Sure. 4 to 12. What do we thank you for?
Just the top section. We've had 6 to 14 programs.
Got it. I think what we have here is we're programming through open streets from 4th through 12th streets.
Whereas.
Oh, the whereas that is what's approved right now. So we're more or less saying,
It's this.
Yeah, well, whereas right now are you doing programming from 4th to 12th though through Open Streets right now?
No. Doing only 7, and this is, it makes sense to me, I'm just trying to understand it, and well, this is good.
I think,
It wanted to do the northern section and it did not get it this year, so I think.
correct. I understand what you're saying here, like, this is kind of like saying what the current is and that what
But the current is only 7th until 10th.
7th.
7 to 10.
Oh, and I'm saying here,
It says
it's 7th.
7th and 12th.
Well, because you have to.
Got it.
It's been a long
Okay, so why does it say?
Thank you. If you said it 4 more times, maybe I would have got it, right? The third was a charm. All right, thanks, Lou. Thank you.
7th and 12th.
And 10th. Excellent. Okay. Any other last minute, let's hear discussion points? Okay. Start with you.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay. Yes.
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 Okay, great. It passes. All right. So the next item here.
You want to try?
Yeah, you want me to do? Thank you for coming out and sticking with us here tonight. Appreciate it. Laura, thank you for being here tonight too as well. You want me to leave and then re-enter?
What? Well, no, we're gonna try and fix the camera problem because people at home are not seeing what we're seeing on the screen. So what we're gonna do, we think we might know what's wrong. We're gonna shut down the meeting. And if everybody at home that wants to stay on, just wait 3 minutes and then log back on, please. To try and solve the problem. Okay, so I'm gonna.
I had to set back on here too, then I.
I gotta turn it on. Nancy, you're gonna sign back on? Yeah.
Doing this.
Vinny, you have to.
Yeah.
You know that,
Yeah, there.
the tan color there, and the oxygen to the bits of color.
Sorry, did you say?
There's areas where you can maybe. Most of the boxes, yeah, straight, yeah, started on it, over, we essentially related, the number of boxes. Whatever they do, all this is better than that. Yeah, that's great, it's like, memory. They did the whole thing, this one, and it just didn't finish it. He saw like 18 people all over the street. Angel City.
People are not.
Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear without an echo now. So next on the agenda is the DOT's proposal for potential sites for pilot microhubs. And Kate.
Hi, everyone. So is a follow-up public statement to a presentation I believe we gave 2 months ago about my pilot program. And I also my colleague who is online help answer questions. Listen, if we want to go ahead and first slide, I don't know if we have to go through the presentation. So the microhomes program is a pilot. We are DOT. We are finding locations in the right of way for both trucks to pull in and to offload onto all Michigan vehicles to make local deliveries. So if we want to go to the next slide, and these are also online. So we have a pilot program, the operating for West Side and in Brooklyn, and we're looking suggestions from the board where you might want to see expanded. So at the end of this presentation, what is a list of locations that we've taken first look at. It's very preliminary first pass of spaces that we think may be workable for a micro hub. And we really were looking to hear what you think of them, if you have suggestions, if you actually think, hey, this is going to work at all, because X, Y, Z, we're looking for the nitty gritty feedback on those. So if you want to go to the next slide. Again, yeah, this is about looking to place the micro hubs in high density areas, use commercial and residential activity to really address the growing demand for residential deliveries. And we can move on to next. That's a rendering of what a microhub would look like, and we have a photo, I believe, of the one on the west side. On the next slide, yep. So that's the interesting one on the Upper West Side, and you can see the cargo bike there. That would be on taking the packages from a truck and delivering them and on to the slide. This is more of an in-depth drawing. It would look like we're looking for about feet of curved space for the micro hubs. Just to use what space it would take up and go to the next slide. Again, we're looking for like where are the areas we see issues with parking, and like we brought up earlier, Amazon trucks, delivery workers unloading on the sidewalk. You know what? You know, if we were going to have this in the area, what kind of restriction would you see, hours of operation, and et cetera. Keep moving on to this. This is a list of initial eligible locations that we think would work. And I know that was a lot. So if you had a chance to, I'm not sure if you already have suggestions or feedback on these sites. Also, I realized that was a lot, but if you're still online, you can add, we feel. So it's going to be curb space. So ideally we're looking for a corner where maybe so it would be painted space as well as a where the If you wanna go back to I want to look at it. So, for years, we have a truck would be able to pull in, park. And then they'll be loaded here in this space. And then the idea is that they, a little bit on, make some other, loads in the vehicles. To get those use. And then you also have it protected. We have folder, vertical elevator. Like, as well as signage, that we can go, what company is allowed to use that. So it should be that the idea. Yeah, it's on the sidewalk, and if we're not has to stand up, then we can be her. As well, I think.
Let's do it. Give me 1 minute here. You should be able to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, now we need the volume up.
Volume.
The volume on the TV.
TV volume.
Can you turn the volume?
No, it's okay. Just that Uma's gonna speak on behalf of the tape here. Uma, can you try again?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yes, without echo. Perfect.
Amazing. I couldn't hear everything that was being said, so if there was a question, would you mind repeating it? Or if you wanted me to, Kate, like go over any of these slides, I'm happy to.
I think the question was, what kind of enforcement would we have to make sure that, bikes were, or that the, delivery were on the sidewalk, leaving the pack.
Yeah, so we're going to work directly with the precinct in the area. So in the Upper West Side, we've worked directly with the precinct there, and they've been amazing. They make their rounds every day to make sure both the space is clear and not parked by other vehicles, and then also that the right vehicles are in their space, so the right company that's assigned this to the space is using the space, and that they're conducting the activity the way they should be. And we are also sending our own DOT staff weekly to just check. These are all partners that we're working closely with. So we're only working with a small subset of delivery companies to start. So we have a heavy hand on how they operate, and we have the ability to, I text them honestly when I hear things that are going wrong. So I'm able to communicate with them daily. It really is like a very strong partnership to start, given that this is a new pilot we're testing, a totally new concept. So we have a lot of resources that we're throwing at this to make sure it goes right and that we test everything before we expand.
Thanks. I'm just gonna go through with Susan. Okay, Susan, go.
So my question is, I asked Kate this earlier to confirm, one of the sites says Northwest Bowery and Stanton, which would be in CB2. So I just want to ask if you confirm that.
Yeah, that's correct. That was mistaken.
Okay, so the last one on the list is not us.
Got it.
Yeah, you can remove that. Sorry about that.
Wait, so my concern is, so let's say, for example, Amazon has one of these. Are we going to see the Amazon truck dumping all their boxes on this area for sorting by their workers? Or are we going to see, like we see right now through the district? Or are they going to instead be delivering a container, for example, whether they use the soft padded packages that will then be taken by a delivery person? Or will they in fact be sorting on the street as opposed to in their gigantic warehouses and using our public streets for that purpose?
So this is really a transfer point. So not the heavy amount of sorting, and definitely not the spillover that we see in the roadway and the sidewalk. Everything is happening in the space that we're designating, and they're taking their hand carts and they're taking the goods off the truck and to your residential streets. The point here is that Amazon vehicle is no longer doing this all over the neighborhood. They're only using this reserved space within a certain radius. and they're not taking their vans or trucks down the narrow residential streets. Those are, all the deliveries are made by the hand cart or the cargo bike.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little unfair. So in other words, they'll be delivering, let's say, for example, containers, like if you've seen the padded containers to their delivery person who will put it on a hand truck, or they will be using this space to sort individual packages for then their different employees to put on a hand truck or a bicycle. No, in other words, will they be sorting here on our streets what they should have been sorting in their gigantic warehouses?
Here's an example. I live in a building, which is it's the whole building, 240 units, and it's basically a train with a bunch of packages. That train of wagons that it carries have packages on them. Are they going to be figuring out which go to my building on, or are they going to be having the wagon somehow be packaged? And the point is, how much activity, I guess, is how much activity is actually going to happen on the street. Just logistically, I imagine it would be pretty difficult to package up those little wagons, warehouse, and make sure that they got all the way out.
Yeah, correct. Some of that will happen in the space. I get your point that you don't want a bunch of sorting of packages in the space, but part of the point of this is that we're trying to remove all that activity from happening everywhere and consolidate it to one area and sort of allow them to use the space for the transfer. And we can do some more hand holding if we think that there's too much sorting that's happening in that space. But there will be some. They're gonna offload off the truck and they're gonna have to load them onto hand carts. So there probably is gonna be some sorting while they're doing that I can't prevent. But I do hear you, and so that's something that we can keep track of and monitor.
We're going to have a space to do this in the diagram. There was the tan colored marking to do it in, whereas now it's happening on the side or in the street. Yeah, park street. So it'll be more contained, even if it'll be on the street. It won't be blocking, it's dedicated.
Yeah,
I believe that's the intent of this.
That's correct. Yeah. And the cargo bike model is even better, where they've mostly prepackaged everything and they're just putting it into the bikes. There's a lot less sorting that's happening with our companies that are using cargo bikes. So I'm really excited about that model and hoping to expand that one even more than the hand cart Amazon model.
So before we talk about locations and all that, anybody else have want to just speak about it?
Yeah, so kind of building on that, I mean, so the deliveries have to happen. We understand that there's a demand, the workers have to make it happen. And so the frustration though is like a truck unloading in an unauthorized space is kind of like a renegade operation right now. They're or like double parked trucks, creating safety hazards, or like Avenue B becoming a loading site, right? Like we're doing all these cool improvements at Avenue B, but that historically has been a loading site for Amazon. So the dedicated space, but so I think when you guys first presented this to us, we are very enthusiastic about the idea, right? Getting rid of last mile delivery, reduction of trucks going through our communities, the environmental benefits, the traffic safety benefits. The question is though, what's stopping? Is there anything in the contract or the agreement stopping the operator who has agreed to sign on to this micro hub from doing this stuff in other places? Or are we just creating now a dedicated space and they're still going to continue to operate and do these things in other places? Is that Amazon partnership, is there a requirement that this is their only loading and uploading site in CB3 or in a square mile? Or, because the fear is that we have this beautiful concept of micro hubs, we pass a resolution support of it, we get a bunch of cool ones, and it just there's 20 more trucks in the neighborhood. So I guess my question is there a part of the agreement that prohibits them from operating in other places?
Yes, that is a strong part of the agreement, and that is the main reason that this is a benefit to the community. So we made sure it was a requirement. So they sign an agreement that says that within a certain radius of that hub, they are no longer allowed to transfer any goods, block any traffic, be in any other curb in that area. They're only allowed to do that in that micro hub. And so that
That's beautiful.
radius is determined by the
Yeah.
mode. So
The radius is determined by what?
the mode. So if they're using a hand cart, it's going to be a smaller radius than a cargo bike. Obviously there's it's a dense area. There's a lot of demand. So that hand cart can only go so far. It's also someone walking. So that radius is going to be smaller. So in the rules, we have it coded as a 1/4 mile. I think that actually is still pretty large for a hand cart. So we are we're just working with each company to see what works for them and the demand in that area and kind of make that call. Also the roadway network makes a difference. How many residential buildings are they serving and wherever the micro hub gets placed. So I can't say exactly what it'll be for CB3 until we decide where that space is going to be and who's going to be in that space. But yes, that's a strong requirement.
All right, thanks. All right, Daniel. And folks that are waiting online, if you'd like to speak to this item, please put your hand up. I see we have 2 folks now. I will call on you after we go around the room here. Daniel, you just have 2 minutes.
Daniel Tan, we're not on this committee, but I both support for this idea that I think it is necessary to have a space so that we can get be some money. Have a go to parks on her on southwards on Essex and 32nd Street blocking of the lane. I actually think that if and I called I should forward to Susan more, but I 311 complaint and once a week the police come and say anyway, I also have specific comment on some of the ones that were on the agenda. That I don't think that street along the here street is a good location. It is there is a parks that they came to the parks committee that they're gonna that's part of Allen Street Mall that's gonna be renovated. Or I'm talking the meeting and then the mall. Possibly the park department. It's also along the bike lane, which I've seen places where they're unloading avenue like that. The valley rolls into the lane. They park there. There are many trucks. They want to call them electric bike trucks or whatever, cargo bikes. If they're 4-wheel, they take up right in the bike lane. Specifically, I don't have that patient and then in the east side of Forsyth, that also is a good location. There's in the market there for all the Asian farmers market. They need all and keep it nice there. Northbound Forsyth Street along Median and north of Granite Street is also a spot that is getting by parks. And that is a spot where there's parking spaces that they presented to park community that will be dedicated to get parks vehicles out of that. Like they got a quotation. And Kristen Street along the North Stanton Street is also a 2-way bike lane along. I also look the other one. We find but it's a street better.
All right, thank you, Daniel. We have Tessa.
I have a question, just if the building code has a regular help, what they spot. And they aren't coming it all the time, which is what the trucks, like 4 trucks a day, they come and go quickly. Won't it be filled with, somebody else? I mean, yes, I know it said you didn't see anyone, but it's just with that, you don't yet. So I'm interested that you can actually say, this is correct, this is matter. It seems that then that should only be for GoPro, if you've got the stuff in GoPro, and then you do the. So I beg you about that, or you would consider your adding that. I thought that to make public speak private, prescribe things like that. So.
Sure, and this is not, feel free to come in and correct me what the,
Yeah.
for the microphone style, some of these are paid base. You locally present costs, are correct?
Kate, I'm so sorry, but it's really hard to hear. I couldn't even hear the question. So if someone on the table could repeat it.
Well, to be honest, we have 30 seconds left. I think they're not related. I mean, I think that these are, there's one it's a different item that we're talking about with a commercial loading space. I mean, we're talking about commercial loading spaces, and this is a pilot of something completely different than what we're talking about, a commercial loading space. I know it's happening at the same night tonight, so it is kind of confusing, but it is, they are different things. This is a pilot from DOT with specific vendors where commercial loading zones are throughout the whole city, and they are not two different companies. And that's why, actually, thanks to David, we actually revised our proposal as we were doing it, because again, it isn't for something, it's just for a commercial loading space. So we're going to move on, Conway, we have 2 minutes.
So for the fourth thing and street station, that's 2 lots. Loading site. So we're talking about the basic of meeting thorough like traffic, but the increased bike traffic, we will see at the speeding problem we already have. To note that having 2 of those zones, 2 blocks north would be something at risk. That it's going to have it is by the state for to fill those parking spaces. I think everyone on this unit has expected we have about our own block. For another, this would call parking space. So I'm wondering if there's a way to apply the state standard. Show those parking. That's going to be a project. It's the same thing we have, even with.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 friends.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So for those who are hearing impaired, it's actually really hard to hear, and the closed captions are not helping at all. So when you guys switched over to the other meeting, to this new meeting, it's actually, we can't really understand or read or hear what you guys are saying. So I'm just going to take the 15 seconds to say that.
Get that feedback.
Again, I couldn't hear you on that. I wanted to say that the sites that are mentioned in the micro hubs, the northbound Allen along the median near Canal Street would be dangerous for cyclists because a lot of people, when they're loading and unloading, are actually loading into the bicycle lane, and that makes it very dangerous, and it also obstructs views of cyclists. I go and bike along that all the time, and it's basically a game of Frogger when people are leaving their packages in the middle of the bicycle lane, and there's no way to get around it except to ride on the traffic. East side of Forsyth, south of Canal Street is where there's a church and industrial commercial businesses that use that side of the street. Also, the fruit and vegetable markets that service the Lower East Side and Chinatown neighborhoods and communities also use that street for unloading and loading. It's also a major intersection for traffic coming off of the Manhattan Bridge, which means that then when trucks come barreling down Manhattan Bridge, they make a sharp right onto Forsyth, south of Canal, making that a dangerous area for people to walk. Northbound of Forsyth along the median, north of Grand Street is not a good site because it's next to a major transit hub, train hub, which is the Grand Street station, which will have consistent pedestrian traffic all around the clock. And that would obstruct pedestrian traffic. And Grand Street is a major artery for vehicles going east to west, and this will increase traffic and cause congestion in this major artery. East side of Christie Street along the median of Stanton Street is a terrible location because it's part of a major traffic intersection that is 2nd Avenue in East Houston. We already have Amazon and Whole Foods already doing a micro hub there, and they're also leaving bins and things and basically crossing the path between Whole Foods and that micro hub for Amazon, causing traffic congestion and near collisions on that street every single day. We already have big trucks barreling down 2nd Avenue onto Christie Street, causing congestion and loud noise, honking, cars stopping. There's a lot of potholes. There's micro hubs where there are bike paths that would obstruct views, and pedestrians crossing the streets on Christie and East Houston and Christie and Stanton should be avoided at all costs. North side of Delancey between Eldridge Street and Allen would be a terrible site because this would slow down traffic coming off of the Williamsburg Bridge, which also is the same for the Delancey between Eldridge Street and Allen Street because it's slowing traffic down going to the Williamsburg Bridge. And Northwest Barry and Stanton is actually in CB2, so we wouldn't really say that or include that in this conversation. But one thing that I do want to say about
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Allie Ryan, Mount Virginia. The three things I wanted to ask about was the concern about package theft. I was wondering if the pilot program is going to track package theft and how much the NYPD is called to address this issue in the I'm not hearing anything.
I'm aware, would this be tracking any kind of package theft?
Can you repeat what you said? Because I only heard the end.
I said not that I'm aware, would we be tracking package theft through this program?
Will you be tracking how much the NYPD is called to one of these zones?
I can jump in here. If PD is being called because there's package theft at the micro hub, we'll certainly know about it because that's one of the things in general where we will be asking the partners to report any issues they're having. But it's not something that we're expecting to be the case, but it certainly is a possibility, and it'd be something we would know about because the delivery company themselves would let us know. So I guess in that way, yes, we would know if there's package thefts at the micro hub.
But my question, so you're not, this pilot program is not going to be tracking that data. So I'd like to ask for the community board to consider adding that to the resolution for it to be tracked, because it is an issue in our district. Number two, as this is public space and resources are being used for private companies, how much money are the private companies contributing to this pilot program?
They are paying a permit fee to use the space. So it's an annual permit. It's maybe $2,800. I'm blanking on the exact number, but something in that range.
How much is a micro hub cost?
You mean in terms of like staff time? It's a pretty minimal cost in terms of infrastructure. It's just white paint and some flexible delineators to protect the space, and a painted area for the transloading of the goods. So the pedestrian.
Okay, and my final question. What is the service area for each micro hub?
Aware of all the package theft in, particularly in the East Village. I don't believe it's when they're being unloaded onto cargoes, because that's when people are there. It's, most of it is in apartment buildings, and some of it on the cargo bikes when they're actually delivering and leaving stuff on the street. I don't think anything that I've ever heard of is when it's being transferred, because you have all these men standing there. I thank you. I think I'm just gonna echo mostly what Van and Ina said, but there is also a night market down south of Canal that really works carefully to coordinate with the town market there. And there is on Grand, corner of Grand and how do I put it? A stolen goods market. That pulls up in it. So maybe they appreciate this big. But it really is important that the deal that was made with the Parks Department, the renovation, that they were going to pull all the cars out of the park and spaces for vehicles. So that was super important. And I have
Just a little bit better here. Keep going. Micro hubs have a number of placement criteria, including but not limited to high mixed land use, appropriate spaces such as commercial corridors, larger streets with open spaces, low passes, close proximity to truck routes, transit, between networks, and areas of high delivery activity and demand. Whereas under the status quo, the distribution of packages consumes street, curb, and sidewalk space that might otherwise be used by pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. And under the status quo, on-street loading and sorting, double parking, using trucks to deliver to doorsteps is common and not discouraged, causing street safety concerns, increased traffic congestion, and poor air quality. Whereas the goal of the micro hub pilot program are to facilitate and encourage sustainable delivery strategies, create public safety improvements, achieve air quality and noise level improvements, increase delivery worker safety, increase use of public spaces, and improve general efficiency of the transportation network. And so this is whereas I'm going to cross out number 7.
Where the DOT has identified the following 7 locations as potential microhub sites and invites the community to comment on these sites as well as suggest other locations. That's number 7. And whereas the benefits of microhubs are aligned with the needs and goals of the district, so therefore be resolved that Community Board 3. We're all going to discuss. So just to go back in time, just what months ago when DOT actually formally came to this committee, presented microhub to them, we all passed a resolution and we want the DOT to come back for sites that we could help. So I appreciate DOT with us and actually is something that obviously the board is interested in. Everyone who spoke about the sites and some of the use it online was in the room, so thank you for that.
So seem to be on either, First Avenue or Second Avenue and the extension, right? Forsyth and Allen. And they don't, maybe it's because of the criteria. Being close to like bringing the work in, to truck the work and et cetera. That may be why that they had used GIS. Anyway, I'm pointing out, if you're going more than half, you can't go more than half out mile from one of those, and you can't go beyond Clinton Street. You can't go that far south either. It's just none of them are south of Penn. I don't know. That would be quite a lot to have right in that area, would think. But these are just ideas. What you're about, like, all 6 of them. I mean, I heard what we're saying, and a couple of them jumped out as compelling, but I don't have notes about what that to me at the time. You could spend a lot of time working through it again. I'm not sure. I was thinking about something closer to me, but I don't want to go into it all.
Yeah.
Would never get my place or any of the co-ops from any of those locations, the co-ops on Grand Street. Maybe the park. That's a lot of housing.
Well,
not covered.
It's interesting because right, months ago we passed a resolution for neighborhood loading zone buildings. They came to ask to put them there. Neighborhood loading.
Anything beyond the co-ops, like the NYCHA housing. I know some of the NYCHA housing has got an interesting setup that I've been noticing up package livings. In any case, I'm just rambling at this point. It's getting late, and I'm not sure what do we want to do tonight.
Kate, I was just curious, like, what is your response to some of the concerns that people have raised? Number 1, and then 2, did you coordinate with parks? I'm familiar with the area that Daniel had mentioned. They did come.
I think a lot of are really patients, because these were overly very first pass that we took, kind of like that was what we do. These areas could work, looking for that specific back. So if you want to memorialize that resolution, I think that would be helpful.
I think the concern is, like, you've identified areas that are actually very well used. And I'm wondering, like, aren't there more, I know they're a little bit more out of the way, but like sites where, for example, DOT may be using for parking or storage or something like that, that could like carve out some space that wouldn't interfere with, for example, the commerce that is already there or the bike lanes that are already there. Like, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's really, like, we need it. I'm just concerned about the locations right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's a request we can go back to at other locations.
So how do we do that then? Because I agree, this is a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic pilot. But so many of these locations, as pointed out by community members, are problematic. So how do we draft this? Do we present these to the full board, or do we ask for more suggestions from the community? Then that just slows the resident.
Here's just some thought, this discussion, there was one, is that like, what was striking to me is that the Upper West Side one, that was Broadway, was Commercial Street, residential. I'm like, all right, that's really interesting that there it is. Lots of commerce, lots of develop, deliveries are happening along that corridor. Those types of corridors. And we're only looking for one site in the community where they're not asking to put in, say, for multiple, maybe more than one. One option is that we can look at corridors that are associated with where trucks are, like C Street. I mean, because both the trucks already on that street, that we're not telling you don't get off that street. Another one of these is like stay on that street, but then we want to become this living zone all the way through. No, I live on Atlantic Street too myself, but I evening forward. So again, looking at from that standpoint of the location in the district that are appropriate. So to as areas like where trucks are coming, the bridges, Manhattan Bridge, Williamsburg Bridge, those areas coming through. So that's just, again, just the thought processes of like, maybe of not having to go back and say, hey, this is, we're getting this, none of these first five, we're going to go for this. But I don't, when I to see if anyone else wants to say.
I just think we need to get back to what we're actually going to say about, like, should we say just like we support this, but we don't support locations that like general.
I think we're there yet, but
I think we need to move on. I mean, that's late.
No, I
Another.
understand. We'll keep telling you. Like, keep going. Get in.
My main everybody else's concerns, but in addition, the enforcement and what about, like how can we force these random delivery people to actually care about the bike lane and the car lanes and not just toss it. Like enforcement is really hard, and we live in a really dense, congested, people bike, everything place. So these recommendations, when anyone looks at them, we have concerns on initially everything you said, but again, once we place these things, enforcement is really hard. So I want to say, I think it's more time to be discussed and to find a neutral one location that we can give for the pilot, and 5, and not the ones that they.
And that's where like when I first saw these locations, none of them popped like, oh, this is a great time, but and as you walk around looking at where we have loading zones, commercial zones, loading zones, they're everywhere. Like it's already happening everywhere in the streets. Just this is a little bit different.
Point on enforcement, who does the enforcement?
So we're gonna be coordinating with the police precinct. We're also going to, have a number of posts on the sign. But there's gonna be a number.
So can I say, I think that's a terrible idea, because DOT is program after program after program and then expects the police to enforce it. That's not what they're signed up for. They are totally understaffed. They can't do their job as it is. I think this pilot is a great idea. I think we should do a few, because if you don't do them there, they're in the middle of the cycle. But I think they have the police. It's just not going to happen. And, that's a problem with, we need to learn. We have outdoor dining that is 50%, I'm going to say, violation. There are not people to enforce. These are all DOT, the open streets. We want the police. The police are furious that they're being expected to enforce this, and they can't. We cannot have programs, keep creating more and more programs
and tell the police, instead of doing their job, that this is what they need to be doing. They're not going to do it. We know they're not going to do it. We know they can't do their jobs as it is. District Service Cabinet today, we just heard, because of all the problems on Delancey, the 7th precinct had to get resources, 7 more cops brought in. Don't know how long we'll keep them. That's for drugs. That's what we need. Sorry, please.
And I think like, and with this again, maybe too, is that maybe that's another, like, giving direction, right? I think we all agree that we want to do this. Like, I hope so. Maybe we'll vote on that. But it's something of where we are seeing like Amazon doing bad things, or one of these partners that you're working with doing bad things. Maybe we can work in those locations of like, why do they choose that to do the bad thing? Is there a way in that street to do something different with them? Again, I'm trying to figure out, how do we give DOT direction? Because again, we were interested in this. Let's you can speak today because, and I just so you know, like, I know, but we're talking. He's a board member. It's trying to stick with the rules here.
One thing I think would be interesting, if you would know, is the locations, for instance, tonight. I guarantee you very few people in that neighborhood get deliveries from Amazon. So that where are the Amazon deliveries going? And to ask a neighborhood, still a very poor neighborhood, environmental justice zone, to the Amazon deliveries doesn't quite make sense, but I'm sure that when we find out where does Amazon deliver locations, like the one in front of Whole Foods is fantastic.
Can I jump in just for a sec, or are we, do you want me to clarify anything?
You're fine. I made you able to, so.
Okay, I was just gonna say on the enforcement piece, I completely agree. PD can't enforce everything everywhere. They have done a really good job on the Upper West Side in supporting us. So I will say that felt like it's been a bit of a difference because this is something new and we asked them directly to help. It may be different in your community board. But on top of PD, we're also sending our own staff out there. And then the last piece is that Amazon's going to do this everywhere anyway. They already are. This provides like a mechanism for us to have a stick in the game. They have to sign a contract with us. They have to be a good partner. And if they're not, we take the space away. It's like a free space essentially for them to have predictable access to the curb. So it's a huge benefit to the company and ideally a really good benefit for the community because we're all getting something out of this. But the only way we can kind of direct Amazon to do anything on our terms is to have them sign a contract with us. So otherwise they just do it on their own and they don't play by any rules. So this just gives us a little more stick than we otherwise have. So that's the benefit on top of, relying on PD and having our own staff kind of monitor the area.
Good idea. Appreciate it. And
Yeah.
we'll try to.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I didn't really know what this was about. When it started, there was a workshop, and then at step 3, they're looking for public input. And step 3 of the workshop's like suggested sites to explore and offer feedback plus room to add more. And those came from, it said it came from a brainstorming session, but it was informed by GIS. I just don't know that we need to do any resolution whatsoever. We've given them a lot of feedback. What they've got is they were taking notes, which I assume that they were the line. I didn't realize that we were going to pass a resolution. And then we started talking about this. I didn't realize that we were just talking about helping them locate one site.
Yeah, no, and I feel like, to be honest, when I first saw the sites come, I had very similar, like, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to kind of do. Discussion here is just enough.
I do think so. I mean, I love the idea of these things. None of these brainstorm locations seem, not to fall out of the park to me. There's 3 in particular that I could, amplify what I heard people talking about as negatives, but I don't know whether we need to keep doing that at 10 till 10.
So what should I consider is what we asking? So DOT gave us this. Is there any parting word? Again, doesn't need to be a resolution, but words that are we asking them to go do some more homework, come back to us.
That it would be good, it would be helpful to understand what are some of the guiding factors that help determine these locations, right? We talked about maybe it's the proximity to the bike lanes, maybe it's, I think that would be helpful in us like having a robust feedback session on locations, because then we could be like, okay, it makes sense why you put it here. Okay, this, like there's some logic to it versus like, what feels a little bit random, what feels like potentially creating blind spots for pedestrian cyclists and other drivers. So yeah, I think I agree with what we're saying, like not a resolution right now. But on the return with any other additional proposals or amendment, like different locations, some thought as to what the guiding factors were to determine those locations.
Yeah, we
what the
did include
criteria
that in the
is.
slide deck.
They are in the slide deck?
Yeah.
I
And
missed it
I guess
too.
what I'm hearing just generally is that maybe we move it to an area that feels like it's closer to the actual demand of packages like Amazon. So if there are like corridors or like streets you want this adjacent to, that it doesn't have to be an exact block, but maybe like if there are areas that you feel strongly that would be a better fit, happy to hear that, just to hone in on an area.
It's surprising not to see House Street out there. Just because that is a corridor that's kind of smack dab the East Village versus the Lower East Side. I mean, just kind of lots of potential housing there. I was surprised not to see that. Allen and Forsyth, those are like our parks, in the district, and it's kind of hard to kind of put something like this on a park, especially with the Parks Department doing so much work there. So I think yeah, like it's in fields like good location to look at. I think the Bowery is kind of on this District 2, District 3 line, so that maybe makes it a little bit harder.
What about Avenue A? There's a lot of people on Avenue A.
Yeah, Avenue A.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, she did say that. Oh, I know she's with her. Yeah.
Could I also ask that this not be enforced by the police? We cannot do that it is detrimental to our neighborhoods with what we're dealing with to have the police, besides all this other stuff that they've been given in the last year to do this. It would be really bad. Why aren't the companies, I think companies, consider having them pay for security? Has anyone thought about that?
I will that's an interesting point. I think one thing that I'll note is that Amazon isn't the only company we're working with, and many of the companies that we want to activate these microhubs with are small businesses. They won't have the capacity to have their own security.
Well, maybe it can be proportional. We cannot take the few police we have left in Community Board 3 and have them enforcing micro hubs. It is just, we can't do that.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Getting a little jumpy, obviously.
That helps. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Adams. I'm with Transportation Alternatives. Just about me. I grew up in, I'm currently raising a kid and seeing our street change a lot. Here,
I'm really committed to thinking about how we make our streets be inclusive, all of us, for families, for young people and older folks. And then you this evening. All right, I'll run through the best. So a couple of things I want to point to. The next one is a few things that are happening right now. Mayor Adams, I feel that he's looking to tackle e-bike, lack of safety on our streets, and really has used that to go after people on bikes, really under the perspective of saying we need to. At transportation, because we believe really strongly in safety for everyone, for people taking in a car, most of you are trying to get around, there's safety. So, and we're seeing with the mayor's proposals with the bike, actually having an opposite effect, making delivery workers less safe, of not addressing the hundreds of people that killed every year. And we're really kind of paying attention in a way to find it helpful as we think is really needed with the direct happening in our street right now. Couple the little summits change. Folks have heard about this a little bit. Okay, so here is really the major policy shift for NYPD to on the minor traffic violations. Saying people now have to go to criminal court and are given criminal summons or minor traffic violations if they are on a bike when they're saying the people are e-bike, what we're seeing is all on a bike. That's or additional one that cops are stopping people. They're doing kind of corridors where they're catching people and are continuing to get traffic tickets for them. It'd be really proportional if we're saying that safety is what we're looking for, and drivers, the traffic pay, you know, online, bond, right to target people on bike, and see that you need to go to criminal court, be caught up transportation proceedings. Then the scale of what could happen to people is quite serious. And put work or find up to 10 all day long. The best case scenario, and NYPD officers sitting often an entire day with to be read. I think that's being issued to them, but it's still in fact traffic ticket. Is changing. Feels actually about you or the situation, but it's really about the treatment and target providing. And what we're seeing is having a really significant impact already on our and we've seen a surge of criminal e-bike percent. And that's 65 criminal summons every day. This is really the focus of the NYPD, particularly recent delivery who have who are documented or maybe live in a mixed status house, family members getting stuff. Worried about what can happen at one. You know, we are not against the larger the federal government is doing really scary things in our communities. People who are not, you know, thinking about documentation every single day, and we certainly don't want to see at that or egg that on, and are really shot up sounding degree for and our questions. We want everyone to follow the rules and that is important here at for lower safer. Everyone to be operating on their streets. But this feels quite hard actually safer and as and again the thing so you know every year New Yorkers are
killed unfortunately in traffic crashes. You know, kids are injured, and that like, and let's look at how we address that at the core. Really help does. So, go to the next one. Other things that are happening right now. Proposal. I'll say 2 miles per hour for all e-bike. I'm not for the scope of, I think the scope of talk about. We don't want to keep it much longer than.
Yeah, it's criminal sentences. Here.
They are several really effective fact that we're advocating for on delivery accountability of saying really tackle this as a system to rein in the companies that are profit on our streets, and we should really be laser focused on how to make this is in a way that is going to be effective. That really is has. So I'll pause there.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll open up to the committee. So, I mean, the question I guess I have here is, you know, and if you can answer this, but it is like delivery app accountability. And I think that it is occurred a few months ago, again, about that, you know, there is incentive to, you know, delivery's done, it's their amount of time, those types of things. Have you been hearing any sentences that like people are now actually paying attention to traffic signals, like free workers, and then we're having this other counter effect of them actually losing work? Is there any that?
Yeah, we've heard from deliveries, that they are very much hearing from people who are getting a number of tickets for delivery worker. And there's a quite and so it does either they're putting one of the people that's being headed to the work or we'll say that a lot of the some of the tickets that are being out are incorrect. The issue, not for violations even. So I think getting pedestrian people talked about where the light changes if you're walking or riding a bike. They're giving out tickets for those. We think that some of the bike is actually going running a red light, but really in actuality it's a leading interval. So people are getting up with they're being wiped away, cleared the judgment. Not worth, you know, my time. That and one thing that we also see is there has been a push. We have worked around trying to not encourage right because of some of the work that has been done. There are safe e-bike options that are longer batteries, safer, that are protecting against fires. Back to the more sustainable bike modes, we people are being stopped on bikes, they'll shift back to moped, just community in mopeds, but because they're like, well, so.
No, yeah, no, I think it did. I get it.
Sorry,
There's just the point I had is I guess, are we seeing that they're actually losing work because are we seeing workers actually pay traffic more now because of fear of getting implemented, that they're actually losing the work from the delivery app? It's really.
So thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
This is another piece, yeah, is the because this is really grouped in the companies, and someone goes a lower speed or that which people want to live work is the deadliest occupation in your city. Then they get activated. So there's retribution. If someone takes too long to pick up, drop off a delivery order. For here, delivery workers, a really high number of what are called the active picked out, saying you had to do 5 deliveries, get order, your time, how you work, if you would really point people to get like safety for the livelihood. It is and why one of the apps being illuminated. There should be a blackout, but there are like reasonable number of
Got it. Okay, thank you. Do that, 3 people here, that signed up.
So we're talking as if it were the delivery workers that are doing, and we're falling into that. And I think it's because people complain more about delivery workers. If you go to and from work on First Avenue, Second Avenue, in the rush hour, it's not delivery workers, it's people going to work. But I don't think they're being targeted. But I would like to ask you that. Are we seeing delivery workers being disproportionately targeted? And are you tracking at all, or are you able where this is happening?
Yeah, so great question. We're the what around this is actually coming back. At some point, so I think exactly kind of what the numbers are. We don't have it or we and it follows really neat, but typically higher for delivery workers.
Right, because they could be deported.
Yeah, so like 90% of, like sidewalk tickets are to, by. So there is definitely kind of a correlation that we see, a disproportionate impact, and there's part and the impact is so fearful that not only would hire to
I have a copy actually of a summons that was given to a delivery worker for abandoning his bike because he was in the building delivering. So that's kind of the things that they're doing now. This is promoting with Joko. What the drivers are doing is they're buying locks. So even though they don't need locks because their bikes are locked, they're using locks to show that they're not abandoned. It's a ridiculous situation, but I do hope that there's some tracking that you're able to in the future track where this is happening, and who is getting the deeds.
Okay, thanks. If you could try to make it simple, I'll give you up to 2 minutes, but if you want to go further, it'd be appreciated.
Look at place. And this is all work. Whatever. It's related to that. You need that out. Bang, get it. South to the light, the red light, fortunately was on camera. Somebody killed a month of it. I think it's school. We started. First, I had a problem. Trying to be cool. Some. This.
Okay, makes sense. Appreciate it. Cecil. What? All right. Bingham.
Right. My main premise, I favor of runs. First one, comes the first with it. Different evidence, that's mainly targeting black and brown worker, evidence and published data from previous crackdown, the longest lines that were not criminal found that you target black and brown workers with this. the time that this policy will go into effect, it will be up to me. Especially, the fact that it's going to effect now, many black and brown New Yorkers are like, ice dragons and would make it hand meant to do it. They would be more easily caught up in that. Like that's morally repulsive to me. I think we should not be doing this. That means that you should not be working New Yorkers who would be at risk of opportunity to be support. So the other one, so the risk here, the consequences are disproportionate. In the sense that are getting tickets for this, the amount of damage the driver SUV or SUV deal with the traffic laws in this city, is far greater than an e-bike. E-bikes are facing criminal substance that drivers will still facing. So this is ridiculous. This should not be happening, and yeah.
Thanks, Liam. Right on time. Yeah. Anyone on the committee want to speak?
I think what we're saying is not if someone's doing an illegal practice, whether they're on a bike or in a car or whatever, that they get away with criminal activity. That's not what we're saying. It's the disproportionate way that that criminal activity is being addressed by PD, right? This criminal summons elevation versus a ticket, right? If a bicyclist runs through a red light and creates unsafe conditions, they should be ticketed. Should they get a criminal summons that they have to go to court and risk that kind of engagement with the system? That is what's at question, because now you're saying, okay, cyclists, you can't go down this bike lane at a certain speed, and we want you to follow all these protocols and all these things. And then right next to it, a car going 34 miles per hour and legally able to do that and kind of, making right turns at streets at, 20 miles per hour. And, I think we just have to put in perspective what we're saying here. We're not saying like we want this order and that we want people to be able to do whatever they want to do if they're on a bicycle. There should be regulations on how people are operating on our streets, and there should be consequences. But we have to be mindful of how we're pushing forward those consequences. The other piece I will put to this is a reminder for those who maybe are new to New York, but when I was a kid, cycling, there was no bike lanes, right? There was no regulation. There was, a regular bicycle goes 15 miles per hour. I mean, like, I know we're not talking about the 15-mile-per-hour question tonight. We're talking about e-bikes, right? But there was a time where people just didn't want bikes in Manhattan, right? Political officials didn't want bikes in Manhattan. Banned bicycling in Manhattan. I think we're on a slippery slope when we're, questioning like, how folks should be on our streets. We want people to be more sustainable devices. We encourage cycling, we encourage micromobility, but we have to make sure that we're protecting each other, making conditions safe for each other, but then also being mindful of how folks are engaging with police. And I will just say, as one of the few person of color on this panel, I really want people to think about the implications that this has on immigrant communities right now. And what we're saying and what as a committee we're standing for morally, if we're not defending immigrant communities at this moment.
Sean?
Right. We've used the word illegal a number of times pretty loosely. Rules of the road are regulations. It is not illegal to break those rules. It is a violation, and it's a traffic violation. So this idea, boggles my mind. How could it become a criminal summons since there's no criminal activity involved? I mean, so I'm not sure what Mayor Adams has done with this, but this is a no-brainer to be for whatever resolution that I hope has been drafted.
Yes. We do have drafted.
Top of it. My belief is that they are targeting people to force deportations. And that is morally repugnant to me.
So I'll get going here. Whereas on April 25, the MIP began a new policy of issuing criminal sentences to cyclists for low-level infraction, like red light, stop sign, overriding. Because policy traffic ticket that could be paid for or contested online, and where drivers and vehicles continue to receive violation or would result in great message about how we prioritize public safety on our streets. Vehicle infractions are treated civilly and criminally, but considerable numbers of deaths and injuries. And whereas a criminal summons requires court, which can lead to criminal record or jail, note you failed to appear will have a warrant or arrest issue. Cyclists who are not citizens of the United States, which is many delivery. The criminal justice system are highly dangerous, detention and deportation without any due process. Additionally, count criminal justice system could jeopardize an application for asylum seeker status. And where the criminal substance creates a criminal case, which is public information and may facilitate the operations of immigration and customs enforcement. ICE, despite New York City being a sanctuary city. Whereas according to news reports in the 2 months of exchange, cyclists have received criminal summons for wearing headphones, stopping just ahead of the painted stop line, being at the leading pedestrian interval, which has been legal for cyclists to do since 2019. That is the need to regulation by cyclists. C3 agreed. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. So therefore, that board 3 calls on NYPD to immediately end the policy of issuing criminal court summons to cyclists for low-level traffic violations and find another way to mitigate lack of compliance with regulations.
Certainly in favor.
Yeah, does anybody have any? All right, we'll just go down the line. Okay. David says yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, motion passes. Great. Thank you, guys. We have one more. Sorry, we'll just do a really quick. I super apologize for this long agenda in July. I'll just say last year, we had one agenda item, which was what we're doing right now. So. Yeah. So this is just a quick little update. We're not taking any vote on this, no nothing. This is the district needs. I'll send this to you all too as well. So I take another, just look at it again, just simplifying some of the things into bullet form. The office is working on updating a lot of the statistics, but it's kind of like where we've done here is that really just getting into what is the need. Which was really hard for me to understand, to be honest, through especially internally discussions with Susan to kind of get what is the needs, really trying to get back to seeing and what the need is, even though it's sometimes I get stuck in policy. So tried to get away from that and really the need. So just real quick, ADA, accessibility, bus stops, subway stations, East Broadway, Delancey, 2nd Avenue. Keeping it simple. We show pedestrian traffic safety. It's just talking about the crashes. And so we have the statistics. So what I'm going to do, where we had last year, this house in Delancey Street, 3rd Avenue, just going to put in what do the statistics say are our high priority intersections, corridors for traffic crashes, injuries, and fatalities. And we're just going to put that in. So keeping it simple. Yeah. Track changes on so you can see what changed from last year, just so you see that. We're talking about safety corridors. Talking about DOT should prioritize the Harding and pedestrian refuge areas along 1st, 2nd, and Grand Street. So these are painted work that that they should actually now go ahead and actually harden them more with better things than just. So that's a need because they've already done it. Daylight intersections. This was we had a resolution this past year on daylighting more intersections, priority locations, schools, and signalized intersections. So just putting it in there. We'll put in the DOT implement commercial neighborhood loading zones throughout the districts. We put in implement a micro hub pilot project in there. We have discussed a lot. We've got with all of the infrastructure for delivery vehicles, which was something that was hit tonight. Conducting a survey for high demand areas, install bike corrals, other infrastructure, and then also telling them to work with other city agencies and to talk about developing off-street indoor facilities for essential delivery work. That's the city to figure that out. Demographic updates. Looking at where we have our bus systems, increased bus schedule reliability through additional bus lane appointments for the M14. Additional services for 14A and D, since those residents are way far away from the subway. We're updating for NYCHA, Bissell of the boroughs, and where those locations are for rats. Sanitation. We're saying sanitation should expand the use of the Empire bin program. That's something that we had in similar but different curves last year. So it's kind of like what their updated Empire bin thing is. Talking about NYCHA, their containerization project as well, their program. Litter basket pickup should be increased. CD3 litter baskets by Essex Crossing, which are non-existent. Okay, you can do that. And then also sanitation should expand educational opportunities to building managers on best management practices. That was something. Yeah. Oregon. It's dirty. Yes. Sanitation should provide instant funding for community composting programs. The budget priority. Okay. Propose increase and attention resources for removal of graffiti stickers. That's a budget priority. Some of this stuff is going to come off and go to our budget priorities.
This is a copy. You could get in, but not.
Well, I mean, trash litter pickup is like there's no cans on lots of streets, like litter cans, like litter baskets on many corners. How's that a policy when litter baskets it's big? Got it. I don't like this, to be honest. I'm super confused by the whole thing. Oh, but this committee speaks to like all this stuff. I mean, sanitation, trash. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I don't like this that the city makes us do. And I think that.
vehicle traffic. Enforcement for the vehicles. And. And see if you can move, I mean, person up.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a little bit more time, obviously. But not tonight, because we're all tired and we're done. We'll do a roll call.
And there's Saturday we have. Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday,
Time is that? Time is it?
1 o'clock. I gotta work. Twelve to two.
All right, Vincent Sarita.
Here.
And then, Tanya Bates, and Lee Furman. All the lunch.